The weight of Lin Ming's body explained everything. For powerful dragons like him, the weight of a tier 10 mage should be weightless like a piece of paper. Dragons were born with tier 8 strength, and even a newly born tier 8 dragon would feel the same way. But now he, a Sage Realm dragon, felt that Lin Ming was extremely heavy. If it wasn't for the solid physical bodies of the dragon clan, he would probably be struggling right now. Even a Sage Realm expert didn't have such weight. If there's anything worth going on the trip, take me there, Lin Ming said coldly. Yes. At this moment, the giant dragon didn't dare to slight Lin Ming. There's a place ahead where a god tier once died. Do you wish to head there? The giant dragon asked Lin Ming. Sure, Lin Ming nodded. The current Lin Ming had seen quite some god-tier experts' inheritances, but he had never been to the real place, where a god-tier expert died. Many of the good things where the god-tier had died have been taken, but there are still extremely precious things that will not budge if one's strength is insufficient, the giant dragon said. Extremely precious things? What are those? When Lin Ming heard this, his interest was piqued. He did not want things that were not precious anyway. Pure souls that have been accumulated in the place where a god-tier expert had died, the dragon said. Pure souls? When Lin Ming heard this, he frowned. Yes. After a god-tier expert dies, his soul would go through many years of tempering and would have long lost its consciousness and the sort. It would just be an extremely pure remnant of the god-tier's soul, the dragon explained. In the many years, no one has been able to absorb a pure soul, but with your power, you should be able to do that. You should know that the absorption of a pure soul would directly upgrade a person's consciousness to spiritual consciousness. The dragon added, although he was a member of a dragon clan and had a strong body, the tiers of their spiritual consciousness were terrifyingly low. On top of that, their spiritual consciousness had a very low growth rate. Therefore, the dragon yearned for a god-tier pure soul, but he simply didn't have the ability to absorb one. What if I already have the spiritual consciousness now? Lin Ming smiled and asked. After countless reincarnations, Lin Ming's consciousness had long grown into spiritual consciousness. Furthermore, Lin Ming's spiritual consciousness was extremely tenacious. I haven't finished. Even if you have already upgraded your original consciousness to spiritual consciousness, there's still a chance that your spiritual consciousness will undergo another qualitative change. The dragon spoke once more. Another qualitative change? Lin Ming's interest in pure souls was growing. Yes, there's a chance that you'll be able to directly obtain the divine consciousness. The dragon nodded. After obtaining divine consciousness, just your consciousness alone will be able to suppress even Sage Realm experts, making them unable to even raise their heads. If not for the fact that only Tier 10 experts are allowed to enter this place, the Sage Realm experts would have been guarding this place day and night. There were many things that the giant dragon knew. In the Battle of Fate, for so long, no one has been able to take the pure souls and absorb them? Lin Ming asked. Those who were able to enter the Battle of Fate were among the most powerful and monstrous existences in their worlds. Even a single empire would have a few monstrous existences, let alone a whole world. After so many years and so many monstrous geniuses, yet no one was able to remove the pure souls. This was enough to prove that it was very difficult to take the pure souls. Master, do you still want to try? Although the giant dragon knew how terrifying Lin Ming was, he didn't have much confidence in Lin Ming when it came to absorbing the pure soul. His intentions in mentioning the existence of the pure souls were that he wanted to give Lin Ming a blow on his confidence, such that even if he was so powerful, he would still be powerless in front of the real good stuff. Of course, why not? Lin Ming said. Now that the real good stuff was right in front of him, why wouldn't he go? All right. The giant dragon quickly went to the location of pure souls. He couldn't wait to see Lin Ming's defeated look. He really wasn't happy to be someone's mount, and that someone was a mere tier 10 human mage. However, the dragon didn't dare to resist. After all, although Lin Ming was merely a tier 10 mage, his power was simply out of the world. Therefore, being able to see Lin Ming's defeated expression wouldn't be a bad choice either. Master, that's the place. The dragon pointed ahead and said. Lin Ming looked towards the direction in which the dragon had pointed, and found that the location of the pure souls was completely surrounded. From the looks of it, although no one in his world knew the details of the Battle of Fate, the other worlds had quite a good understanding of this place. Go over, Lin Ming, who was half lying on the dragon's body, said. Yes, the dragon didn't say any nonsense and directly let out a dragon's roar. Right now he was trying to make enemies for Lin Ming. After all, he was Lin Ming's mount now. The more people were unhappy with him, the more people would go to find trouble with Lin Ming. It's the guy who subdued a Sage Realm dragon. Following the dragon's roar, everyone turned their heads. When they saw Lin Ming who was lying on the dragon's body, they knew that this was probably the Lin Ming that the cold voice had spoken of. Following Lin Ming's appearance, most of the people sensibly made way for him. Stop! There were those who sensibly made way, and naturally, there were those who weren't quite sensible. I don't know what method you used to subdue this dragon, but I advise you to come down and walk properly. A burly man stopped Lin Ming as he pointed at Lin Ming and said. The man wanted to be the center of attention. Besides, in his world, he could fight solo against a beginner Sage Realm cultivator. Thus, when facing Lin Ming, he had confidence and pride. I can travel however I want. Is this your home? Lin Ming sneered and asked. You're courting death. After hearing Lin Ming's words, the burly man snorted and directly attacked Lin Ming. At this moment, the giant dragon also stretched out its giant claw. I'm afraid this guy is doomed. To think he dares to take the giant dragon's attack head-on. That's right. The dragon clan is famous for its powerful physical bodies. How dare he? This burly man was using his physical body to clash with the giant dragon. In everyone's eyes, this was tantamount to courting death. Dung! Under everyone's incredulous gazes, this burly man actually withstood the giant dragon's attack. Furthermore, the sound that was emitted when the two clashed was the sound of steel colliding. The dragon also looked at the burly man in front of him in disbelief. Were there so many monstrous trial takers that had entered the battle of fate this time around? If they had used magic or skills to resist his attack, he would not have been so surprised, but this burly man had just used his physical body to resist him. The dragon even felt a sharp pain from his giant claw. You're dreaming if you think you can rely on the giant dragon, the burly man said coldly. Get lost. If I intended to kill you, it'll be extremely easy for me to kill you here, the burly man said. Of course, the burly man was saying this because he knew that if he fought the giant dragon head-on, he wouldn't be able to gain any advantage either. Now, he had already achieved his goal of letting the people around him know that he wasn't someone to be trifled with. If I kill you here, no one will say anything, right? Lin Ming looked at the burly man, sneered, and said, You brat, don't think that you're so great just because you have a giant dragon. If you don't have a dragon, who do you think you are? The burly man said, full of disdain. Just as well, it's a bit crowded here. You can leave, Lin Ming said after getting off the dragon's body. Where should I wait for you? The dragon lowered his head and asked. Go. Before the dragon could react, he was put into the stupa. As the dragon sensed the aura of the divine artifacts in the stupa, he was more and more aware that Lin Ming was not simple. I'll give you 3 moves. When the burly man saw that Lin Ming actually let the dragon leave, he couldn't help but rub his fists. 1 move will be enough, Lin Ming said coldly. You specialize in the physical body, right? Lin Ming asked. You're not human, right? Lin Ming asked again, consecutively. That's right, but these will be the last things you will know. The burly man licked his lips and said, Then I'll just use my physical body to fight with you, lest others say that I'm bullying you. Hearing this, the burly man laughed loudly. Die. Lin Ming moved forward and punched. To think that not only did this guy let the giant dragon leave, but he's even using his physical body to collide with that burly man, an old man said. Since he can subdue the dragon, it should mean that he possesses strength that surpasses the dragon. Another young man spoke. Pooh! The burly man was still immersed in his fantasies when he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his body. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. This is impossible. Seeing the scene before them, everyone had incredulous expressions on their faces. Deep within the eyes of the burly man, fear could be seen. In Lin Ming's hand, everyone looked at Lin Ming's hand. The heart of the burly man was red and throbbing. 1 move is enough, Lin Ming sneered coldly as he strode forward. To think that someone in Tier 10 allowed him to make 3 moves, even the Sage Realm experts wouldn't dare to say such a thing. He actually killed that fellow in an instant. The people on the side all had incredulous looks on their faces. The burly man was an existence that could fight head-on with a dragon. And now, Lin Ming had actually used pure physical strength to remove the burly man's heart. Lin Ming threw the heart away. As Lin Ming moved forward, the surrounding people all retreated. In this place, no one cared if you were killed at will. Besides, there were too few people who could walk out alive from this place, so few that it was less than 1 in 100. Let's see, Lin Ming moved forward. When? Lin Ming's figure was pushed back a few steps. Even though the god-tier powerhouse was dead, his divine might was still untouchable. This was also the reason why for so long, no one had been able to take the pure souls. However, since Lin Ming was here today, he would take the pure souls. No one has been able to take the pure souls for so long, even he can't. Seeing Lin Ming being pushed back, some heaved a sigh of relief. For so long, no one had been able to take the pure souls, but Lin Ming's performance was just too strong. After all, the expert who had been able to take on a Sage Realm dragon was instantly killed by Lin Ming with a single punch. He's going closer again. The next minute after Lin Ming had been pushed away, he quickly got closer once more. This was because the pure souls, which no one could absorb, were somehow summoning Lin Ming. Although there was a protective barrier around the pure souls, the summoning did not weaken at all. Buzz. Light emitted around Lin Ming, and from his body, a god-tier aura appeared. Because the level of a god-tier aura was too high, the surrounding people were not aware that he was emitting a god-tier aura. Of course, Lin Ming only had a god-tier aura, but not a god-tier pressure. If he did have god-tier pressure, everyone here would have been turned into meat paste with just the god-tier pressure. As the god-tier aura around Lin Ming appeared, he slowly walked into the barrier. The barrier couldn't stop Lin Ming at all. He went in. Under everyone's incredulous gazes, Lin Ming entered the barrier. This is impossible. After so long, no one has been able to enter the barrier. An old man patted his head and said loudly, For so long, no one from their world has entered the battle of fate, and those who entered before were all trash. A tier 10 expert said, That's right. I still remember that the so-called tier 10 experts from their world didn't even have the strength of tier 8. Another young man said, After so many years of accumulation, such a monster has appeared? The old man frowned and couldn't help but say, Monster? Lin Ming turned his head, causing the old man to shudder. Lin Ming hated it the most when others said such things about him. But right now, the pure souls were the most important thing. So, Lin Ming didn't make a move. He's actually doing it. Lin Ming directly held the pure souls in his hands. Fuse. Lin Ming spoke coldly. The pure souls directly entered Lin Ming's body. Berg. The reason why the pure souls were called pure souls was because of their degree of purity. Now that the pure souls had entered Lin Ming's consciousness, it was about to burst Lin Ming's consciousness. The only reason Lin Ming was not dead by now was that his original consciousness had already evolved into spiritual consciousness. Moreover, because Lin Ming had experienced countless reincarnations, his spiritual consciousness had become extremely tenacious. For most of the tier 10 experts present, even if they were lucky enough to obtain the pure souls, they would probably explode and die on the spot. Lin Ming felt like his spiritual consciousness was about to explode. The heart-wrenching feeling made Lin Ming wish he was dead. Lin Ming didn't even have the strength to hold on. HMPH, you have overestimated yourself. For so long, no one has been able to fuse with the pure souls. Did you think you were an exception? A tier 10 coldly snorted. Being able to enter the barrier is enough to prove his strength, and we shouldn't belittle him. Another old man spoke up. Now that Lin Ming had entered the barrier, he could be said to be the first person in all of history. Look, the surrounding barrier has disappeared. As Lin Ming entered, the barrier protecting the pure souls disappeared without a trace. It is indeed so. As someone said that, everyone moved forward to feel the barrier and found that it was just as the person had said. Lin Ming. One of the tier 10 experts glared at Lin Ming. If Lin Ming survives, I'm afraid we'll all die. He's too strong. Another tier 10 expert said, If he does succeed, we won't be a match for him. After all, he's already too strong. Yet another tier 10 expert spoke up. As the two of them fed the flames, a thought appeared in everyone's minds. They had to kill Lin Ming now. Such was the way of the world. To take advantage of one's weakness was simply the most realistic thing to do. And now, Lin Ming was facing this predicament. His strength had attracted too much attention. Now that Lin Ming was fusing the pure souls, he no longer had the ability to resist. Kill him. A young man couldn't help but attack. He didn't believe that the current Lin Ming still had the ability to resist. After all, they had seen Lin Ming's pained expression very clearly. How dare you? Although Lin Ming was in extreme pain, how could they imagine the pain that he had experienced back then? Although Lin Ming was in pain, his consciousness remained clear. The young man was frightened by Lin Ming's gaze, but he boldly moved forward again. Die. Lin Ming forcefully maintained his breath. The 16 types of mutated seeds of flame appeared in the young man's body, directly turning him into ashes. To think he can still instantly kill others in such a situation. Following Lin Ming's attack, everyone was stunned. Judging from Lin Ming's attack just now, many of the people present knew that they wouldn't have the ability to resist at all. Even if some of them knew that they could resist, they didn't want to rashly attack at this moment. Moreover, from Lin Ming's current condition, it could be seen that it was impossible for him to successfully fuse with the pure souls. Some of the smart ones were waiting for an opportunity. They were waiting for the minute Lin Ming was unable to hold on to attack. If they were to attack Lin Ming now, the risks would be too high. After all, Lin Ming had the power to instantly kill most of the people present, even though he was in such pain. Of course, there were also some who wanted to sit back and reap the benefits. Everyone, don't be afraid. We can use our magic and spiritual artifacts to attack together. We only need to stay at a safe distance. Another Tier 10 expert said. As he said this, most people nodded. When the surrounding magic elements and various powers erupted and attacked Lin Ming. Stop! At this moment, an old man stepped forward. My whole life, I've hated people who take advantage of others. I can't stand the sight of all of you attacking this young man here. At this moment, the old man was actually standing on Lin Ming's side. Boom! Following the attacks of the surrounding crowd, the old man actually blocked their joint attack. This was sufficient to prove how powerful he was. After all, such an attack would require the strength of at least an intermediate sage to block it. This was because the people present were all prodigies of their worlds and the monstrous geniuses of their worlds. Pooh! Even though the old man managed to block the joint attack, he still spat out a mouthful of blood. It's over. The old man looked at the gathered energy around him and closed his eyes. He turned his head to look at Lin Ming, who was still in excruciating pain and sighed. He knew that he was going to die here. He's dead. Just as everyone's attacks arrived, the old man was stunned when he sensed that Lin Ming's aura had completely disappeared. To think I, a 6-time champion, would meet my end here. Although I always had the determination to die, alas. The old man sighed. He had never expected that Lin Ming, who had attacked so fiercely just now, would lose his aura completely at this moment. However, I don't regret it. The old man smiled and gathered the power around him, wanting to fight to his death. After all, the defensive spiritual treasure on him was unable to defend against the joint attacks of the people around him once more. Boom! Just as the old man thought that he was about to meet his end here, a shield suddenly appeared around him. No matter how powerful the attacks around him were, they were all blocked. The shield in front of the old man didn't budge at all. This is... The old man abruptly turned his head to look at Lin Ming. At this moment, Lin Ming was still completely devoid of any aura. He is... The old man's consciousness had also reached the level of spiritual consciousness. Even a sage realm expert could only reach the level of spiritual consciousness. In his opinion, there shouldn't be any mistakes in his perception. After all, no matter how powerful Lin Ming was, it was impossible for him to reach the level of divine consciousness. This was because only God-tier experts could obtain the divine consciousness. Furthermore, the current Lin Ming was lying motionless on the ground. Thank you for helping my master. Black Tortoise stepped forward and cupped his hands as he spoke. You are an artifact spirit. The old man looked at Black Tortoise in disbelief and couldn't help but exclaim. To think this Tier 10 fellow possessed a God-tier artifact. How could this be possible? In the old man's world, unless one had reached the God tier, one simply couldn't have a God tier weapon. After all, there were only a few God tier weapons in the entire world. Even a Sage Realm expert couldn't have one. Black Tortoise, who had appeared before him, showed that Lin Ming definitely had a God tier weapon. Yes, Black Tortoise nodded. How dare you attack our master at this moment? Gandalf's figure also appeared. Gandalf's strength corresponded with Lin Ming's. This was also why Gandalf could be considered the summit of the Great Four. If Lin Ming reached the God tier, Gandalf would also have the strength of a God tier. At that time, there would be 2 God tier powerhouses. 2 artifact spirits, which means 2 divine artifacts. The old man bit his tongue and rubbed his eyes. Lin Ming, who was merely a Tier 10 guy, had 2 artifact spirits. This made the old man even more incredulous. After all, in his opinion, just 1 divine artifact was enough to represent Lin Ming's monstrosity. Originally, he thought that Lin Ming was the apple of a God tier's eye, which was why he had a divine artifact. But even God-tier experts couldn't have 2 divine artifacts, and now Lin Ming had 2. Bloodseeker, get out here and kill them. Gandalf turned around and said coldly. Coming, a cold voice sounded. The old man turned around and almost bit his tongue. A 3rd artifact, spirit. The old man said in disbelief. How is this possible? It felt like a dream. At this moment, the surrounding Tier 10 experts were also stunned. They simply didn't expect that Lin Ming had the protection of divine artifacts. Of course, they couldn't see what was happening inside the shield created by Black Tortoise, thus they didn't know that there were 2 other spirit artifacts next to Lin Ming who were angry and wanted to kill them all. Wheels of Wrath. Bloodseeker coldly spoke. As Bloodseeker said this, the Wheels of Wrath appeared in an instant. The Wheels of Wrath. Even the old man who was from another world was very aware of the reputation of the Wheels of Wrath. 2. Following the attacks of the Wheels of Wrath, the Tier 10 expert who had led the attack on Lin Ming was instantly killed. The blood he vomited was quickly absorbed by the Wheels of Wrath. Then his body directly turned into ashes. Divine artifact. The people who had just attacked were now dumbfounded. Run. As everyone came to their senses, they immediately scattered and fled. Lin Ming had 2 divine artifacts on him, 1 for attack and 1 for defense. In addition to Lin Ming's original strength, they were simply courting death here. Was it you who attacked our master just now? Gandalf took a step forward and spoke coldly. At this moment, everyone had thrown away their pride. They were only thinking of one thing now, and that was to run away. Run? Gandalf snorted coldly. They dared to attack his master, so how could he just allow them to escape just like that? Suppress. Gandalf spoke. As Gandalf said this, the stupa fell. Boom! Although Lin Ming was now merely a Tier 10 mage, the power that he had now was at the Sage realm. Therefore, the power that Gandalf could now use was even more powerful. Oh! As Gandalf controlled the stupa, everyone present was suppressed. Oh my God! The old man looked at everything that was happening in front of him in a daze. The current Lin Ming still didn't have any aura. However, just the few divine artifacts he had with him had completely suppressed these world-level geniuses. Spare their lives. At this moment, Lin Ming suddenly spoke. The suppressive power hadn't been seriously released yet, thus the number of casualties wasn't much. Yes, master. Gandalf hurriedly withdrew the suppressive power. Vermilion bird, bring them into the heaven and earth diagram. After Lin Ming said this, he once again entered the state where his aura was completely gone. Another artifact, spirit. The old man was already a little numb. He hadn't expected Lin Ming to have 4 divine artifacts. Even a god-tier powerhouse couldn't have so many. Now, all this appeared on the same Tier 10 mage. Everyone, if you don't want to die, please go on in. Black Tortoise stepped forward and spoke coldly. Everyone present was being suppressed by the stupid tower. At this moment, they no longer had any ability to resist. Moreover, if it wasn't for Lin Ming's words, they would have all been dead by now. They had all thought that they were sure to enter the gates of hell. Now that they could live, they did not want to resist. It's fine as long as you enter. My master said that he would not threaten your lives. However, master did say that since all of you took the opportunity to attack him, there will definitely be some punishment. The vermilion bird stepped forward and said, You don't want to enter? Gandalf coldly snorted and asked, No, I'm entering. One of the Tier 10 experts quickly said as he understood that he couldn't resist at this moment. Everyone expressed their submission as well. They knew that if Lin Ming wanted to kill them, they would have already died. Now that Lin Ming did not take their lives, it meant that they still had a chance to live. If they resisted now, they would probably die immediately. Sigh. A Tier 10 expert couldn't help but sigh as he entered the heaven and earth diagram. The heaven and earth diagram. No one below the Sage realm can escape from it after entering, a Tier 10 expert said. Some of them knew of the heaven on earth diagram. They hadn't expected that they would encounter such a powerful opponent when they worked together to deal with Lin Ming. On top of that, the power of Lin Ming was immeasurable. Everyone had no choice but to compromise and enter the heaven and earth diagram. Of course, Lin Ming had his own plans. Although they wanted to kill him, it could not be denied that they were all extremely powerful. They were the prodigies of their worlds. The value of keeping them alive was definitely much greater than the value of destroying them now. Lin Ming still didn't know what the other worlds were like. After all, there wasn't anyone from his world who had survived the battle of fate after entering. Thus, there hadn't been any valuable information brought back. The current Lin Ming needed some information. Buzz. Although Lin Ming was still without any aura, his face had become a little ruddy. At this moment, in the core of the earth, the Sage Realm experts guarding Lin Ming were all frowning deeply. It's the same for Lin Ming. Seeing that Lin Ming's aura was completely gone, a Sage Realm expert clutched his chest and said in an extremely pained tone, "No, it's impossible. Even if Lin Ming might be defeated, but with his strength, it's impossible for him to be defeated in such a short time." Gandalf frowned and gestured for everyone to calm down. "Control Lin Ming's body first," Gandalf said. "Okay." Everyone nodded and transferred their power into Lin Ming's body. At this moment, in the battle of fate, Lin Ming's body was continuously surging with power. "Pooh!" Lin Ming let out a breath. "His aura is back," the old man said excitedly. However, Lin Ming had only let out a single breath. At this moment, Lin Ming's spiritual consciousness started to split crazily. One strand of spiritual consciousness turned into 2 strands of spiritual consciousness. 2 strands of spiritual consciousness turned into 4 strands of spiritual consciousness. 1 gives birth to 2, 2 gives birth to 3, and 3 begets all things. Lin Ming's spiritual consciousness continued to split. However, although his spiritual consciousness was splitting apart, each strand didn't weaken and was all extremely powerful. However, Lin Ming's head couldn't withstand such a large amount of spiritual consciousness. If it wasn't for the fact that Lin Ming's head had been remodeled, or the fact that there was a mutated seed of flame inside his head, or for the existence of the refined steel bone, the current Lin Ming would have exploded and died long ago. But even so, Lin Ming was still unable to endure it. He was currently standing on a fine thread. If there was even the slightest disturbance to the balance point, he would probably explode and die. At this moment, within Lin Ming's head, more and more spiritual consciousness appeared. These were spiritual consciousness that could only be possessed by Sage Realm cultivators, but were now so abundant in Lin Ming's head that they seemed to be worthless. "To think this kid dares to fuse the divine consciousness at tier 10. A voice appeared in the depths of Lin Ming's consciousness. Lin Ming's actions had alarmed the few god-tier experts in the depths of his consciousness. "Back then, even I was 1 step away from reaching the divine consciousness." At this moment, the great sage spoke. Although the great sage was powerful in battle, to the point that no one present dared to say that they could defeat him, but his spiritual consciousness had only reached the peak of spiritual consciousness, which was the half-step divine consciousness. This was also why the great sage was trapped by the binding curse. If the great sage reached the god tier, the binding curse would probably be unable to trap the terrifyingly powerful great sage. And now Lin Ming was actually trying to forcefully fuse the divine consciousness. If he did succeed, he would naturally be able to ascend to the heavens in a single step. Even the Sage Realm experts, and the half-step god tier experts, would be suppressed by Lin Ming's divine consciousness. Furthermore, if he succeeded, anything and everything he wanted to know in his world, whether it was the above-ground world or the underworld, Lin Ming would be able to know with just a single thought. This was the strength of the divine consciousness. Of course, the benefits didn't stop here. In the future, Lin Ming's thinking abilities and growth would increase exponentially. However, if the divine consciousness could be fused so easily, it wouldn't have been such that no one was able to take it for such a long time. Even the Sage Realm experts couldn't fuse it. "Should we help him?" the diagram spirit asked. "Help? How can we help him with this?" The demon god smiled helplessly and asked. Outsiders had no way to help one with the fusion of the divine consciousness. "But if we leave him be, I'm afraid Lin Ming won't be able to hold on," the god of fire said anxiously. "This kid, Lin Ming, does this every time. He doesn't care about the consequences," the diagram spirit sighed and said. "If he cared about the consequences, he wouldn't have grown to the stage," the demon god calmly said. "Lin Ming has done so many reckless things and he always ended up fine. This time, we have to believe in him." The god of fire nodded and said. The god of fire and Lin Ming had spent the longest time together, if one excluded the demon god. "Although we can't directly help him with the fusion, we can guide him," the demon god said. "How do we do that?" the god of fire asked. "We can tell Lin Ming about how we created our divine consciousness back then," the diagram spirit said. "That's right. Diagram spirit, you can go first. After all, your divine consciousness was the most resilient back then." The great sage nodded and said to the diagram spirit. "All right," the diagram spirit nodded, and using a secret technique, he poured his knowledge about achieving the divine consciousness into Lin Ming's head. With this, Lin Ming had a direction. Following this, the demon god and the god of fire did the same, and Lin Ming had already grasped some things. At this moment, more and more spiritual consciousness appeared in Lin Ming's head. So the qualitative change causes a quantitative change. At this moment, Lin Ming's consciousness was still extremely clear. Then let's continue. At this moment, Lin Ming was no longer troubled by the appearance of the increasing consciousness. As time passed, Lin Ming's head began to expand violently, until it had reached the size of a magical beast. Fortunately, Lin Ming's foundation was sufficient. If it were any other ordinary people, they would have died a long time ago. Lin Ming's head is getting bigger and bigger! Exclamation. Under the old man's incredulous gaze, Lin Ming's head had finally reached the size of a castle. This brat! Within Lin Ming's consciousness, the great sage sighed helplessly. If it wasn't for the reinforced steel bone, Lin Ming's head would have long exploded. However, it was also partly thanks to Lin Ming's foundation. How is this possible? The old man was also extremely shocked. How could a person's head expand to be so big without exploding or dying? What kind of monster was Lin Ming? As time passed, Lin Ming's head grew bigger and bigger. If one didn't pay attention, one wouldn't even be able to see his body. Master, he exclamation. Black Tortoise looked at Lin Ming and said anxiously. Master won't be in any danger, right? Bloodseeker couldn't help but ask. Bloodseeker, shut up. If you continue to talk nonsense, I'll give you 2 slaps. Gandalf walked forward and said coldly. I'm telling the truth. It's not like you can't see it, Bloodseeker said aggrievedly. He had no second thoughts towards Lin Ming at all. Bloodseeker knew that only Lin Ming could lead him to a new peak, and only Lin Ming could help him recover from his injuries. Therefore, he was really worried about Lin Ming. Master's aura is still extremely strong. Moreover, we can clearly feel that the connection between Master and us isn't weakening at all. Thus, we needn't be worried about Master in the slightest, Black Tortoise said at this time. Besides, if Master can advance to obtain the divine consciousness, we will all obtain great benefits. At least, Master will be able to heal some of our injuries, Black Tortoise added. Let's wait patiently. Master can definitely advance to obtain the divine consciousness, Gandalf said. Time passed. Lin Ming's head was already indescribably big. Black Tortoise protected him tightly with his shield to prevent any accidents from happening. As for Gandalf and the vermilion bird, they were also closely observing their surroundings. Fuse! With such a huge head, one could guess how much spiritual consciousness was in Lin Ming's head. After all, when there were dozens or even hundreds of spiritual consciousness, Lin Ming's head didn't change at all. Thus, with such a terrifyingly huge head, one could tell that a terrifying amount of spiritual consciousness was within the head. It could be said that even the amount of spiritual consciousness in Lin Ming's world didn't add up to this much. It was tens of times the amount of spiritual consciousness in Lin Ming's world. Right now, that much spiritual consciousness was in Lin Ming's head. At this moment, Lin Ming finally made a move. Fuse! Lin Ming said once more. As Lin Ming said this, the power in his body began to circulate crazily. At the same time, his body was being infused with an endless stream of energy. The many Sage Realm experts that surrounded Lin Ming were constantly infusing energy into his body. With this, even if the trial required an extremely terrifying amount of energy, at this moment, Lin Ming didn't need to worry at all. He need not have any considerations. After all, even though just one ordinary Sage Realm expert might not be able to satisfy him, now all the sages from both the above-ground world and the underworld were around him, providing him with energy. He's moving. The old man who was standing beside Lin Ming looked at him. At this moment, he didn't even know how to describe his feelings. Even though Lin Ming's head was enormously huge, he still didn't die. It could even be seen that Lin Ming's power and so on weren't affected at all. The most important point was that Lin Ming had many divine artifacts protecting him, so the outside world couldn't pose any threat to him. As Lin Ming's energy circulated, all of the spiritual consciousness began to crazily fuse together. 1, 2, 3. All fused into 1. 1 gave birth to 2, 2 gave birth to 3, and 3 gave birth to all living things. Now, Lin Ming was once again in control. He wanted all to become one. The path Lin Ming was on now was where a quantitative change would cause a qualitative change. Such an opportunity could be said to be extremely rare, to the point no one could probably obtain it in a million centuries. After all, no one could have so much spiritual consciousness at the same time, while maintaining the power of each strand of spiritual consciousness. The power of any random strand of spiritual consciousness was equivalent to that of Lin Ming's own spiritual consciousness. Right now, there were countless of them. Only then did the opportunity to cause a qualitative change thanks to a quantitative change appear. Fuse. As Lin Ming said once more, the speed of the fusion became faster and faster. As the fusion continued, the spiritual consciousness began to change. In the end, even the color of the spiritual consciousness changed. It went from being transparent at the beginning to a ball of white, then red, and now purple. Now, each strand of spiritual consciousness that was continuously fusing contained crazy power. Any one of them couldn't even be found in Lin Ming's world. Even after the fusion of Shui and Huo, who were at the half-step God tier, they couldn't achieve a spiritual consciousness of this level. Lin Ming continued to control the fusion, and now, the speed of the fusion had finally decreased. The current speed of the fusion could be said to be slow. Gandalf. Lin Ming said. Master. Gandalf had been waiting for Lin Ming's orders from the side. As soon as Lin Ming called, he moved forward with haste, waiting for Lin Ming's orders. Activate time freeze. Lin Ming ordered. Seeing the current speed at which his spiritual consciousness was fusing, Lin Ming knew that if he were to fuse all the spiritual consciousness together and thus achieve a qualitative change through quantitative change, which would allow the spiritual consciousness to become divine consciousness, it would take an extremely long time. He was worried that the trial to be over by then, which would cause his efforts in going through all the trouble to come here go to waste. Although there was a limit to the number of times time freeze could be cast, as long as Lin Ming succeeded in transforming his spiritual consciousness into divine consciousness, he would gain more abilities, which would make it possible for him to repair some of the damages on the divine artifacts. At that time, the divine artifacts would be able to unleash even more power. The old man was exempted from the range of the time freeze. When he saw that everything outside was at a halt, he finally understood that Lin Ming's power was even more terrifying than he had imagined. This was time freeze. If Lin Ming wanted to, everything here was under his control. But then again, if Lin Ming wanted something, he could still obtain it without time freeze. The elder knew that if Lin Ming made a move, no one here would be able to stop him. As expected, at this moment, only 3 strands of spiritual consciousness were left, but Lin Ming could no longer fuse them. Any one of the remaining 3 strands was comparable to the spiritual consciousness of the great sage back then. If he couldn't fuse them at the end, Lin Ming wouldn't be able to advance to the divine consciousness. Spiritual consciousness of such a tier was something that could only be encountered by chance even by the sage realm experts. Even those at the beginner or intermediate god tier yearned for such a thing but couldn't get their hands on it. But now, to Lin Ming, if he couldn't achieve the divine consciousness, everything would be meaningless. Fuse! The energy in Lin Ming's body surged wildly. At this moment, 5 Sage Realm experts were standing guard around Lin Ming. Someone replace us. One of the Sage Realm experts frowned as he said. The 5 of them had transferred their energy to Lin Ming, but now they felt that their bodies were beginning to collapse. One had to know that they were the top existences in this world. They were the masters of this world, the Sage Realm experts. To think that the 5 of them were unable to transfer any more energy to Lin Ming at the same time. One had to remember that Lin Ming was only a tier 10 expert. Fortunately, they knew that Lin Ming was a monster, so they didn't find it too strange now. What on earth is Lin Ming doing? A Sage Realm expert said with a frown. He has absorbed all of our energy, and even right now he is still absorbing our energy like crazy. They wouldn't have been so shocked if nothing happened after they had poured all the energy into Lin Ming, but now all of it had been completely absorbed by him. On top of that, Lin Ming still needed more. Let me do it. Gandalf moved forward while another 4 Sage Realm experts followed behind to inject energy into Lin Ming. The 5 Sage Realm experts who were replaced began to absorb spirit energy, just in case Lin Ming needed them again. 10 people together. Gandalf shouted. They needed rotations to support the continuous injection of energy, but they also needed to give Lin Ming all they had. What kind of power is this? At this moment, the old man beside Lin Ming could feel that the energy in Lin Ming's body was circulating like crazy. The intenseness of the flow even made sounds like a tsunami. On the surface of Lin Ming's body, one could see the energy whistling inside. How can a tier 10 mage possess so much power? It's just not possible. It was all because there were countless Sage Realm experts who were constantly injecting energy into Lin Ming. Even a Sage Realm expert wouldn't be able to withstand such power. Continue to fuse. Lin Ming circulated his energy furiously, but the remaining 3 strands of spiritual consciousness simply didn't fuse. On the contrary, serious repulsion effects appeared. The terrifying amount of spiritual consciousness just a moment ago hadn't caused Lin Ming much pain, but now, these 3 strands were bringing Lin Ming great pain. The mutually repulsive power caused Lin Ming's body to start twitching crazily. No matter how much Lin Ming circulated his energy, there was no effect at all. Lin Ming has now entered a dead end. The demon god frowned and said, "The problem is any one of the remaining 3 strands of spiritual consciousness is on the same tier as my spiritual consciousness back then." The great sage sighed and said, "If Lin Ming is unable to advance his spiritual consciousness to divine consciousness, then even if his spiritual consciousness reaches an extremely high tier, all his previous efforts would be in vain. To be honest, I didn't think that Lin Ming would be able to reach this stage. After all, the number of spiritual consciousness in Lin Ming's head just now was extremely terrifying." The god of fire said as he walked forward. It was already beyond their imagination that Lin Ming could fuse the terrifying amount of spiritual consciousness till there were only 3 strands left now. "We have to think of a way to help him fuse the last 3 spiritual consciousness," the diagram spirit said. "In terms of energy, we are unable to help. As for our insights, we have just told Lin Ming everything we knew." Currently, the god of fire sighed. "I can still use my power," the diagram spirit said at this moment. "How?" the demon god asked. One had to know that to enter the depths of Lin Ming's consciousness, one had to dissipate all the power in one's body. As such, the 4 of them were only a remnant of their souls plus their consciousness. It was unrealistic to say that they had any power. "Help Lin Ming enter the heaven and earth diagram." The diagram spirit's voice entered Lin Ming's ears. "Who?" Lin Ming let out a breath. He knew that the diagram spirit must have some way to help him, thus he didn't hesitate to enter the heaven and earth diagram. "Vermilion bird, evolve." As soon as Lin Ming entered the diagram spirits appeared. "All right." The vermilion bird's master was now Lin Ming. Since he was now in a pinch and needed her help, she naturally wouldn't back down. "Heaven and earth diagram, heaven and earth." In front of Lin Ming, the heaven and earth in the diagram world began to evolve. "Lin Ming, the divine consciousness isn't as simple as the spiritual consciousness. The divine consciousness is no longer a state of mind, it's a world. The world is the heaven and earth, and the heaven and earth is the world." The voice of the diagram spirit appeared continuously in Lin Ming's ears. Lin Ming entered heaven and earth and stayed in it. "Did I get stuck at a dead end?" Lin Ming closed his eyes and said. Lin Ming couldn't merge the last 3 spiritual consciousness because his mind had entered a dead end during the fusion. The divine consciousness wasn't something that could trap him in the first place. Lin Ming wanted to fuse, but the divine consciousness was inclusive. Fusion and inclusive sounded similar, but fusion was filled with aggression, while inclusive was literal, which meant it was inclusive of all things. Divine consciousness couldn't be formed by the fusion of the last 3 strands of spiritual consciousness. It could only be formed by being inclusive of these 3 strands of spiritual consciousness. After the spiritual consciousness became the divine consciousness, it could include the world. That was what the divine consciousness was. After the spiritual consciousness became the divine consciousness, both the above-ground world and underworld would be under Lin Ming's control. If one thought that this meant Lin Ming would be controlling both worlds in his hands, one should think again, as it was more to including both worlds into his hands. Therefore, if one were to carefully analyze the past generations of those who could become god-tier experts, there weren't any truly evil people. Even those who had blocked the path of the god tier in Lin Ming's world. Before they had done so, they weren't considered truly evil either. "Who?" Lin Ming let out a breath. At this moment, Lin Ming's expression had become calm. His eyes were impervious to desires and passions. Lin Ming stood up. "I am heaven and earth." Lin Ming opened his eyes and said calmly. "Buzz." Lin Ming's body emitted light. The 3 spiritual consciousness in Lin Ming's head had completely disappeared. The so-called divine consciousness didn't exist in Lin Ming's head at all, but his spiritual consciousness had truly advanced to be the divine consciousness. "I am all things, I am heaven and earth, I am the world." That was the divine consciousness. "Thank you, Senior." Lin Ming cupped his hands and said. "To think he can possess divine consciousness while he is merely a tier 10. The great sage said incredulously at this moment. The great sage was doubting life. Back then, he had become a god tier and possessed the power at the peak of the god tier, but even he didn't have divine consciousness. And now, Lin Ming possessed divine consciousness. Ha ha ha. This is really great. The #1 expert in a million centuries, a million centuries. The demon god laughed heartily as he spoke. Let alone 1,000 centuries, a monster like Lin Ming couldn't even be found in a million centuries. Lin Ming will definitely become a god tier expert, and he will definitely be able to break the god tier barrier. The god of fire, for some unknown reason, was actually feeling excited. He was normally a god tier powerhouse who was indifferent to all things, yet he actually felt an inexplicable surge of blood boiling from the matters of a tier 10 mage. Why do I feel that even the god tier cannot bind him? The demon god said from the side. Even the god tier cannot bind him? The god tier is the peak of a world. The god of fire shook his head and said, God tier cultivators have an endless lifespan. With just a thought, they can destroy the world, the great sage also said. The god tier is indeed the end of cultivation. They all knew about this fact. At this moment, Lin Ming walked out of the heaven and earth diagram. Everything in the battle of fate was in Lin Ming's mind. This was how powerful the divine consciousness was. At this moment, a confused voice appeared at the highest point of the battle of fate's trial grounds. To think someone fused with the pure souls. The voice said in shock before continuing in disbelief. Those who can enter are all tier 10, how can they really fuse with the pure souls? Either way, the aura of the pure souls has completely disappeared, another voice said. No matter how monstrous one is, it's impossible for someone to fuse with the pure souls. The voice refused to accept the reality. That was the pure souls. In layman's terms, that was the divine consciousness. It was something that even the sage realm experts couldn't possess or fuse, but now it had been fused on the trial grounds of the battle of fate, a place where only tier 10 experts could enter. No one would believe it if they heard such news. The trial grounds of the battle of fate have their rules. After all, the grounds were created by a powerful existence. Even we as god tier existences are restricted. Otherwise, with so many good things in there, even the gods wouldn't be able to resist. The voice appeared once more. Which means the rules shouldn't have changed there. The meaning behind the voice's words was very obvious. It was impossible for an existence beyond tier 10 to enter the trial grounds of the battle of fate. Even the god tier existences had no way of entering. After all, the trial grounds had their rules. Although the god tier existences grasped the laws, these laws were not even worth mentioning in front of the rules. Thus, in this land of rules, no one could possibly cheat. If there exists a tier 10 mage who can fuse the pure souls, I'm afraid that things will change in the future. The voice said with some emotion. Right now, the many worlds are peacefully coexisting and not disturbing each other, and it's all thanks to. The other voice sighed. All right, there's no need to say any more. Perhaps there's a problem with our perceptions, or perhaps the trial grounds have blocked our perceptions. After all, it's simply unrealistic for a tier 10 mage to absorb and fuse the pure souls. Another authoritative voice appeared, interrupting their thoughts. The few of them looked at each other. They knew that their perceptions couldn't possibly be wrong at the same time, but they simply couldn't admit that there was someone in the trial grounds who could absorb the pure souls. At this moment, Lin Ming also sensed that something was strange. He raised his head and looked at the sky. Who are you? Lin Ming's question was heard by the master of these voices. This. One of the masters of the voices was so shocked that he was at a loss for words. How is this possible? To think a tier 10 mage, he can. As Lin Ming's voice reached their divine consciousness, the voices in the outside world instantly went wild. Their emotions, which had just calmed down, exploded once more. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible, an old voice said with a trembling voice. To think someone has obtained the pure souls in the trial grounds of the battle of fate. With the appearance of Lin Ming's voice, all of them were sure of the result. The god tier powerhouses of the worlds, right? Lin Ming asked again. Yes. A solemn voice appeared. I'll see you in the future. Lin Ming nodded and said. The allocation of power is really going to change. One of the voices trembled. Make a move now, one of the god tier powerhouses said coldly. Yes. The moment this suggestion was voiced, it immediately received unanimous agreement. The appearance of Lin Ming's voice made them fall into panic. If we attack alone, we'll definitely suffer a backlash. However, if we attack together and resist the backlash together, we still have a chance. Another voice said. Wait a moment. I believe the god-tier experts of the worlds are all watching. Let's attack together. The solemn voice appeared once more. Attack together. At this moment, the god-tier experts of the various worlds immediately came to a consensus. The world that Fellow lives in hasn't had a god-tier expert for over 100,000 years, so there's no need to worry about being taken revenge on. Another god-tier expert gave everyone a shot of reassurance. Attack! As a voice said this, the many god-tier powers surged toward Lin Ming. At this moment, the ground where Lin Ming was standing began to collapse. The rules of the trial grounds were already tattered. However, even these tattered rules weakened the god-tier powers layer by layer. Unfortunately, with so many god-tier experts attacking together, even if their powers were weakened layer by layer, it would still be extremely terrifying. The entire space started to shatter. Many black holes appeared around Lin Ming. Buzz! Lin Ming's reinforced steel bone resisted the pressure around him. How can these guys do this? At this moment, in the depths of Lin Ming's consciousness, the great sage spoke angrily. This is simply exterminating an entire world. The demon god also spoke furiously. If Lin Ming were to be exterminated, the hope of the world he lived in would probably be extinguished. After all, Lin Ming was the god-tier barrier breaker. If Lin Ming died, the highest force of the entire world could only remain at the peak of the sage realm. But we the god of fire sighed helplessly as he said. They were currently completely powerless. Even if they still had god-tier strength, or even if their strength was still at their peaks, they still wouldn't be able to withstand the combined attacks of so many god-tier experts. It's over. I never thought that the outside world would be able to cause fatal damage to Lin Ming. The demon god closed his eyes and said, in the world where Lin Ming lived, everyone followed Lin Ming's lead. Even though Lin Ming was only at tier 10, the many Sage Realm experts treated Lin Ming as the juncture. Thus, Lin Ming didn't face any threat in their world. It could be said that as long as Lin Ming wasn't too reckless, there wouldn't be anything able to threaten him in the outside world. However, after entering the trial grounds, all this had changed. Here, many god-tier experts had been keeping watch. Due to Lin Ming's monstrous nature, they all felt a sense of fear towards him. They were worried that the allocation of power in all the worlds would change. What? Lin Ming's hair stood on end. He realized that his question had brought him great trouble. Boom! The many Sage Realm experts around Lin Ming were affected by the shockwaves. Although it was just slight ripples that had hurt them, all of them coughed up blood. Some of them, such as Gandalf and the others who were transferring energy to Lin Ming, directly fainted. Fortunately, there were many Sage Realm experts present. By helping each other, they could ensure that no damage would be done to their foundations. If only 2 or 3 Sage Realm experts were here, their foundations would have been damaged. What is happening? These are actual god-tier pressures. An underworld Sage Realm expert struggled to get on his feet as he spoke in disbelief. Lin Ming's body. One of the Sage Realm experts shouted. The words of the Sage Realm expert were unnecessary. Everyone could see it clearly. Cracks had started to appear on Lin Ming's body. One had to know that Lin Ming had the refined steel bone and was of the god-tier bloodline. Yet, even his physical body was starting to crack. This was the first time such a situation had occurred. One had to know that although he had died previously, his physical body hadn't changed at all. It had merely become lifeless. But now, Lin Ming's physical body had suffered such a shockwave that even they had vomited blood and almost suffered heavy injuries. What had Lin Ming encountered inside? What was happening to Lin Ming? With a boom, Lin Ming's physical body suddenly dissipated. Impossible. How is this possible? No matter what was happening in the Battle of Fate's trial grounds, Lin Ming's true body couldn't possibly just dissipate like that. This was what they all thought. It's over. You guys were the ones who insisted that Lin Ming would be invincible in the Battle of Fate, and he will definitely be able to obtain all the fate. You were the ones who said this. One of the Sage Realm experts closed his eyes and sighed. Just what kind of monstrous place is the trial grounds? With Lin Ming's strength, how could anything happen to him? Another Sage Realm expert was much calmer. Lin Ming's strength should have definitely reached the advanced Sage Realm. He should be an invincible existence. At this time, Gandalf said when he finally came to. But what should we do now? With the dissipation of Lin Ming's body, everyone's hearts were no longer united. It was as if they had suddenly lost their backbone. They had been so motivated, so hot-blooded, and so united all because of Lin Ming's existence. Now that Lin Ming's physical body had dissipated, They were at a loss. Although they were the top existences in the world, they had lost all hope now. In just an instant, the united group of people once again felt the difference between the above-ground world and the underworld. Don't panic. Gandalf naturally understood the situation such that if he didn't stabilize their hearts at this moment, big problems would be awaiting. Do all of you trust Lin Ming? Gandalf asked coldly. Yes. An underworld sage realm expert nodded. If the question was about their trust in any other person, they might have to hesitate. But if they were asked whether they trusted Lin Ming or not, they wouldn't hesitate to give an affirmative answer. Then let's wait. Lin Ming will definitely create another miracle. Besides, with Lin Ming's strength, he can destroy everything in his way. Gandalf said. Okay. As Gandalf spoke, everyone quieted down again. At this moment, in the Battle of Fate's trial grounds, Lin Ming let out a blood-curdling scream. The refined steel bone was making creaking sounds. The origin of life was circulating crazily. The God-tier bloodline in Lin Ming's body was also circulating crazily. Lin Ming's various potential was being stimulated crazily at this moment. However, all of this was useless. This was because what Lin Ming was facing was the joint attack of all the God-tier experts. HMPH. Suddenly, a cold snort sounded. All of the attacks vanished into thin air in that instant. The black holes around Lin Ming had all dissipated. How dare you? This voice filled the entire world. Then, a huge palm appeared and descended. A palm that possessed such power had long surpassed the Tier 10 restriction of the trial grounds laws. The laws were something that the many God-tier experts were unable to break through or would even suffer a backlash if they tried. However, in the eyes of the palm's master, it was as the laws were nothing. Pooh! All the God-tier experts who had just attacked vomited blood. Although that happened, the palm's master was extremely restrained when he attacked. He had made his attack so that the God-tier experts who had attacked received their punishment, but their foundation was not truly damaged. Everyone, hand over 1,000 years of cultivation. Otherwise, you know how it ends. This voice spoke without any emotion. What cultivation realm is this? This is impossible. Everyone was stunned when the master of the palm attacked. The God tier was the highest realm in the entire world or even the entire universe. It could be said that among the many worlds, God tier was the highest cultivation realm. No one could break through past the God tier. With so many God tier experts attacking together, even if the demon god and the others were at the peak of their strength, they wouldn't have been able to withstand it. However, at this moment, a simple palm had easily neutralized their attack. Furthermore, with just a casual wave of the palm, all of them had vomited blood. From this, they understood that if the master of the palm really wanted to make a move, their so-called immortalization would be nothing more than a joke. The master of the palm had the power to wipe out God-tier experts. My patience is limited. I'll count to 3. The master of the voice spoke impatiently. When? The God-tier experts weren't fools. No one resisted, and all of them obediently handed over 1,000 years' worth of cultivation. They had an endless lifespan. Just 1,000 years of cultivation was nothing damaging to their foundations, though it did pain them a little. With a slight clench of the palm, the 1,000-year cultivation of the God-tier experts turned into a ball. Your physical body has completely dissipated. I'll help you reconstruct it. The palm started to communicate with Lin Ming's divine sense. You're not bad. Scratch that. Among all the worlds, you're the best. The master of the palm praised Lin Ming. Who are you? Lin Ming was dumbfounded. How could there be such an existence that treated the God-tier experts like they were ants? There were so many God-tier experts, yet they didn't even have the slightest ability to resist. The voice didn't reply to Lin Ming. At this moment, in the core of the world that Lin Ming was in, Lin Ming's physical body had been reconstructed. In his newly constructed body, not only was his original power in it, but the master of the palm had also casually injected 1,000-year cultivation power into it. Take these things as my gift for my first meeting with you. The palm waved, and a ball of light appeared in front of Lin Ming. With so many 1,000-year cultivations, it would be enough to create several God-tier experts out of thin air. Absorb them. Remember, don't break through your current realm yet. Of course, it's impossible for you to suppress your cultivation realm under such circumstances, but I will be here to help you. The master of the voice was impatient with others, but he was extremely patient with Lin Ming. Buzz. The terrifying number of 1,000-year cultivations that was enough power to create several God-tier experts was directly injected into Lin Ming's body. Boom! Lin Ming's body exploded on the spot. These were thousand-year cultivations of the god-tier experts, numbers of them. They were injected into Lin Ming's body in an instant. One could imagine how powerful the energy that Lin Ming was enduring was. Buzz. Lin Ming's body, which had just exploded on the spot, was once again reconstructed by the great power. Before Lin Ming's body could be completely reconstructed, it was instantly blasted apart again. Just like that, Lin Ming's body repeated the cycle of exploding and being reconstructed countless times. When Lin Ming finally completely absorbed the energy, his body had gone through the process of exploding and remolding countless times. It was as if Lin Ming had fallen into an unfathomable cycle of reincarnation. At this moment, the pain brought by the constant remolding could be considered insignificant compared to the physical and mental impact it brought to Lin Ming. The current Lin Ming was feeling as if he didn't know even whether he was alive or dead. At this moment, Lin Ming's realm had reached the god tier. The god tier. The god tier that could only be reached in Lin Ming's world if he broke the barrier. Just now, Lin Ming was only at tier 10, but now he had leaped directly into the god tier. After all, the master of the palm had said that the amount of power could directly create several god tier powerhouses, thus it was not surprising that Lin Ming had directly become a god tier powerhouse. Boom! Even though he was on the trial grounds, heaven's tribulations still appeared. HMPH. The master of the palm snorted coldly, and all heavenly tribulations disappeared in that instant. Such was the strength of the master of the palm, who was so powerful even a cold snort from him could make the heavenly tribulations disappear. Buzz. The palm pressed down lightly on Lin Ming, and Lin Ming's realm fell like a bungee jump. In the end, Lin Ming's realm was once again suppressed at tier 10, but Lin Ming's true strength was not suppressed. Only his realm changed, which, in other words, meant that Lin Ming had the power of the god tier when he was at tier 10. As such, Lin Ming was already being repelled by the laws here. Leave. The so-called fate here is no longer of any use to you, the master of the palm spoke. Yes, Lin Ming nodded. The current Lin Ming had no interest in fighting for the fate that the tier 10 experts yearned for with their lives. Senior, may I ask your name? Lin Ming was still extremely curious about the master of the palm. This was because even the many god-tier powerhouses didn't know his identity. Since you're so curious, I'll tell you, the master of palm said. You lot as well. The voice reached the ears of all the god-tier powerhouses who had attacked Lin Ming. I am heaven's order. You lot dared to break the balance just now, so I taught you a lesson. The words of the voice invoked many gasps. The master of the palm was heaven's order? Did heaven's order even have an incarnation? Or another way of putting it, did heaven's order have consciousness? If it truly was heaven's order, it wouldn't be surprising for it to possess such power. After all, heaven's order was in charge of the laws. The power of laws that the god-tier experts possessed wasn't even worth mentioning when compared to the real laws. We should have the chance to meet again in the future, the voice said to Lin Ming. Go on then. After the master of the palm finished saying this, only did the palm completely disappear. Oh, right. When you have enough power, remember not to take revenge on these god-tier fellows. After all, I've also violated some things by helping you this time, the master of the palm told Lin Ming one last thing. I'll remember it. Lin Ming nodded and took a step forward. If Lin Ming were to make a move against the god-tier experts when he could do so, it would affect the balance of many worlds. As Lin Ming took a step forward, he also disappeared from the trial grounds. It's over. When this guy advances, we'll probably... One of the god-tier experts closed his eyes and couldn't help but say in a trembling voice. That fellow has just absorbed all of our 1,000-year cultivations. It probably won't be long before changes occur. Another god-tier powerhouse said. If I had known earlier, I definitely wouldn't have attacked Lin Ming. Some of the god-tier powerhouses started to complain. However, they couldn't have known that attacking Lin Ming would cause heaven's order to make a move against them. After all, Lin Ming was only a tier 10 mage. What they didn't know was that Lin Ming would not take revenge on them. Therefore, at this moment, other than the common fear in their hearts, they began to form an alliance. After all, no matter what, there was one law that the strongest existence in a world was that of the god tier. No matter how powerful Lin Ming would be then, it would be impossible for him to surpass the god tier. Lin Ming. At the core of the earth, Lin Ming's eyes flew open. Had the battle of fate ended in such a short period? One of the Sage Realm experts couldn't help but exclaim, Lin Ming, your strength. They could feel a sense of oppression from Lin Ming. One had to know that they were all peak Sage Realm experts. Yet, Even they could feel a sense of oppression coming from Lin Ming. This indicated many questions. Your realm hasn't changed, so how could it be? Gandalf glanced at Lin Ming. Lin Ming's cultivation realm was still at tier 10. At this moment, Lin Ming had already concealed all of his strength. Otherwise, these sage realm experts probably wouldn't be able to withstand it. This was because if one disregarded Lin Ming's realm, his true strength was that of the god tier. The surrounding sage realm experts could sense the energy fluctuations in Lin Ming's body. Every time Lin Ming entered a trial, he would reap great benefits and become even stronger. But this time, Lin Ming had changed far too thoroughly. They felt somewhat unfamiliar with the current Lin Ming. How was the battle of fate? Gandalf asked. I didn't participate until the end. I left halfway. Lin Ming shook his head. He didn't know the final result. You left? Gandalf frowned and asked. Yes, the fate inside is no longer tempting to me, Lin Ming spoke honestly. Let's go. It's too dark here. We'll talk at Giant City. After Lin Ming spoke, everyone gathered at the center of Giant City. When everyone saw the changes in their surroundings, their jaws dropped. They were the strongest existences in this world and possessed the strongest combat strength, but none of them had such an ability. To think Lin Ming had transported all of them to the center of Giant City in an instant. Lin Ming, are you now? Gandalf couldn't help but ask. The power that Lin Ming had displayed, combined with the pressure they were feeling from Lin Ming, had caused them to be unsure of Lin Ming's strength. To be honest, I'm not really sure what my true strength is now. I only know with my current strength, it would not be a problem for me to fight against a sage realm cultivator. Lin Ming shook his head and said. Lin Ming was quite lost about his true strength, because though his tier had been staying tier 10, his strength had been constantly increasing. Weren't you able to do that some time back? An underworld sage realm expert asked. Before Lin Ming had received the great sage's inheritance, he had been able to beat an intermediate sage realm ice mage till he vomited blood. With this as a basis, the words Lin Ming said were not of much use to them in gauging his true strength now. Lin Ming, you just need to tell us, will you be at tier 10 forever? After all, only after you break through to the god tier will the god tier barrier be broken, a sage realm expert said. This question was also the key. No, Lin Ming shook his head. Lin Ming had a path he had to walk. If he wanted to break through, he would have done so long ago. Lin Ming had used all his strength to suppress his cultivation to remain at tier 10. Your physical body dissipated just now. What happened in the Battle of Fate's trial grounds? A series of questions were asked. Lin Ming patiently explained everything that had happened on the trial grounds. What? Heaven's order appeared? Hearing Lin Ming's words, the sage realm experts felt even more incredulous. Only those who had reached the god tier would have the chance to learn of the existence of heaven's order. This was because when one broke through to the god tier, heaven's tribulations would appear. Heaven's tribulations were carried out by heaven's order. As such, the sage realm experts had never come into contact with the so-called heaven's orders. They even felt a little unfamiliar with the word heaven's order. Is heaven's order the will of heaven and earth? A sage realm expert asked. Heaven's order is the embodiment of the laws of all worlds, Lin Ming explained. Heaven's order wasn't merely a will, it was the law itself. For example, night and day alternate, but if heaven's order wishes only for the day and not the night, the whole world will only have brightness. If heaven's order says that there cannot be mountains and rivers in the world, that will be the end of all mountains and rivers, Lin Ming said. This was the power of the laws. Of course, this was only a microscopic explanation. Rules could also achieve such power. After reaching the god tier, with a single thought, an entire world could change. Laws gave rules such power. If the laws dictated that the worlds would disappear and be rebuilt, that would happen in an instant. If the laws wanted the rules to cease to exist, the rules would no longer be of any use. Lin Ming, I'm afraid that your current strength has already reached. After hearing Lin Ming's words, a sage realm expert couldn't help but speak, but halfway through his words, he hesitated. This was because he felt that it was too absurd for tier 10 mage to possess the strength at the god tier. Seniors, I need to leave. Lin Ming stood up and said. Okay. Everyone nodded. They simply had no right to question Lin Ming's whereabouts and matters. Although Lin Ming did not make a move, or even show his strength, they could feel that Lin Ming had the power to crush any of them. One should know there was no lack of peak sage realm experts among them. Lin Ming stood up and entered the stupa. The chaos element, huh? Lin Ming said calmly. I have to open up all magic elements and fuse them. Lin Ming closed his eyes and looked inside his body. Right now, Lin Ming's physical body was so powerful that it had reached the god tier. In other words, Lin Ming could kill a peak sage realm cultivator with a single finger. Thus, even if he opened up all the magic elements now, his physical body wouldn't feel any pressure. Buzz. Energy fluctuations appeared around Lin Ming. The basic magic elements are wood, water, fire, and earth. Then there's the dark element, the thunder element, and the space element. There's also the healing element, light element, and spirit element. Lin Ming said, how could so many magic elements all be awakened? And by a tier 10 mage at that. Such matters were like something that came out of a fantasy. Even if one was born a prodigy and had dual elements, no one had awakened 3 elements. And now Lin Ming wanted to awaken all of these magic elements. Then he would fuse them all and turn them into chaos elements. Legend had it that even when one was a tier 1 of the chaos element, one could already control the spirit of all living things. If it was Lin Ming who obtained the chaos element through fusion, it was only a given that he wouldn't just be a tier 1. Lin Ming, don't open up another magic element for now. The few people in the depths of Lin Ming's consciousness knew what he was thinking. Thus the demon god opened his mouth to stop him. What's wrong? Lin Ming asked. With your current strength, although the god tier inheritances are no longer of much use, it's still necessary for you to get Pangu's inheritance, the demon god said. After all, Pangu must have touched the barrier above the god tier back then. The demon god continued. With these words, Lin Ming was instantly interested. The barrier above god tier? Lin Ming quickly asked. Yes. The demon god nodded and said, so, you should get Pangu's inheritance before opening up all the magic elements. Pangu's inheritance will definitely be of great benefit to you. After saying all this, the demon god once again returned to the deepest part of Lin Ming's consciousness. As expected of someone who can separate the heavens and the earth. Even in this world, he is so powerful, Lin Ming smiled. Back in Lin Ming's original world, Pangu was the existence that split the heavens and earth. Now, in this world, he was one who had touched the above god tier barrier. Lin Ming stood up. Since he decided to go, there was no time to waste. With a step forward, Lin Ming arrived at the location of Pangu's inheritance. Even though Lin Ming was extremely powerful, he was still forcefully stopped in the outskirts of Pangu's inheritance. Lin Ming raised his head and looked at everything in front of him. This place seemed extremely normal. Excuse me, make way please. A woodcutter behind Lin Ming was unhappy that Lin Ming was blocking his way. This? Lin Ming looked at the barrier he had conjured to shield himself, curious as to why it didn't have any effect on the woodcutter. He couldn't help but frown. He couldn't feel any energy fluctuations from the woodcutter either. Senior Pangu was a magnanimous person. Lin Ming couldn't help but exclaim in adoration. Pangu was buried in this ordinary place, yet the location didn't affect the ordinary people at all. Even tier 10 experts wouldn't feel any obstruction when they arrived at this place. What Lin Ming didn't know was that even the Sage Realm experts wouldn't be affected here, because they weren't qualified to receive the inheritance of the divine Pangu. Only those who were qualified would be affected by the inheritance. Lin Ming raised his palm and placed it on the barrier. Buzz! As Lin Ming placed his palm on the barrier, it was like a stone that was tossed into the water, and ripples resounded on the barrier. Lin Ming. A voice resounded throughout the world. Yes, I'm here. Lin Ming lowered his head and said. Lin Ming wasn't curious why Pangu knew his name, because Pangu seemed to have been waiting for a long time here. Come in and have a seat, Pangu's voice sounded again. Okay, Lin Ming nodded and stepped in. This time, the barrier didn't hinder Lin Ming at all. As Lin Ming entered, everything around him changed. A bare-chested man stood in front of Lin Ming. I've been waiting for you for a long time. You're finally here, Pangu looked at Lin Ming and said. Senior, Pangu should have only been left with a remnant of his soul, but now, he didn't seem like a remnant soul at all. Instead, he was an existing god-tier powerhouse. Lin Ming had seen the slumbering underworld god-tier expert, but his aura was far inferior to Pangu's. Pangu seemed to be in control of everything in his world. I don't have any requirements for you to accept my inheritance. You just need to raise this axe. Pangu pointed at an axe beside him and said. Isn't this just now? Lin Ming looked at the axe. It was clearly the axe in the woodcutter's hand just now. It was plain and rusted, and Lin Ming couldn't even feel any power from the axe. Lin Ming walked to the axe, reached out his hand, and picked it up. The axe was still an axe, while Lin Ming seemed to have become a woodcutter. Good, very good. Since you picked up the axe, you can accept my inheritance, Pan Gu nodded and said. Senior, Lin Ming said in a daze. Why did it feel like Pan Gu was playing house, and he was like a child who was being coaxed by Pan Gu? You'll understand when the axe recognizes you as its master. Pan Gu didn't explain. Instead, he said, my inheritance is very simple. It can split the heavens and earth. With this, Pan Gu placed his palm on Lin Ming's shoulder. Lin Ming felt a force enter his body. Then Pan Gu moved his palm away. We're done, Pan Gu said to Lin Ming. What? Lin Ming was dumbfounded. It had ended just like that. This was Pan Gu's inheritance? Pan Gu had just patted his shoulder, and it's done. Try and let the axe recognize you as its master when you get back. After all, I still have to respect the axe's opinion, Pan Gu said. By the way, I won't be going into the depths of your consciousness. After all, I still have things to do, Pan Gu continued. He could tell at a glance that the demon god and the others were there. Senior, you're not fooling me, are you? Lin Ming couldn't help but ask. Everything that Pan Gu had done up to this point was like he was fooling a child. Lin Ming couldn't help but be suspicious. What? I'm fooling you. Hearing Lin Ming's question, Pan Gu's eyes widened. Ha ha. Pan Gu laughed so hard that he grabbed his stomach, unable to straighten up. It's been such a long time, and this is the first time that someone has said that I'm fooling people. You brat, you really are something, Pan Gu said as he wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes and looked at Lin Ming. I know why you think that way, but I can guarantee that my inheritance surpasses those of the little fellows, Pan Gu said. To Pan Gu, the demon god and the other god-tier experts were just little fellows. However, since you've already asked me about it, I'll tell you this. The inheritance I've given you is called splitting the heavens and earth. Of course, it won't be of any use to you now, but in the future, it will be very useful when you face the Great Barrier. It was very rare that Pan Gu explained. All right, I'm feeling sleepy now. I'm going to sleep for a while, Pan Gu stretched lazily and said. What? Senior, you Pan Gu did not act like a god-tier powerhouse at all. He was literally like a scoundrel among ordinary people. He was a god-tier powerhouse, yet he said that he wanted to sleep. Wasn't he purely trying to make Lin Ming curse? Senior? Lin Ming spoke tentatively. Take the axe and try to make it acknowledge you as its master. I'll be sleeping for a while. Pan Gu waved his hand and spoke again. All right. Lin Ming did not say anything else. He took the axe and walked out of the place. Since you picked up the axe so easily, it shouldn't be difficult for you to make it acknowledge you as its master. Pan Gu's voice once again sounded in Lin Ming's ears. Yes, Lin Ming nodded and entered the stupa. Buzz. Lin Ming poured his power into the axe, but it was like a stone sinking into the ocean. There was no reaction from the axe at all. Lin Ming continued to pour his power into the axe, but there was still no reaction from the axe. It really isn't an ordinary axe. The amount of power that Lin Ming poured into the axe was akin to all the power of a peak Sage Realm expert. If it was an ordinary axe, it would have been reduced to dust by now. Right now, the axe was unconditionally absorbing all the energy that he injected into it. Since you want an endless supply of energy, I'll give it all to you. Lin Ming poured all his energy into the axe crazily. Buzz. As Lin Ming did so, the axe finally showed some reaction. Lin Ming closed his eyes, and the world-class spirit gathering array carved on the reinforced steel bones started crazily absorbing the surrounding energy. Lin Ming's current energy pool was actually unable to satisfy the axe. At this moment, Lin Ming had exited the stupa and was back in the outside world. This was because even the spirit pools in the stupa had been sucked dry by Lin Ming. Currently, there wasn't sufficient spiritual energy and magic elements to satisfy Lin Ming's absorption. Due to Lin Ming's absorption and the crazy circulation of the world-class spirit gathering array, the place and space seemed to have collapsed. The surrounding magic elements even turned into substance. Lin Ming poured all of his power into the axe, and it took every drop in. However, other than its initial reaction, it didn't budge at all. For a whole 3 days and nights, Lin Ming continued to crazily inject his power into the axe. In the end, even his body was instinctively rejecting his actions. However, Lin Ming didn't have any thoughts of stopping. If the axe had stopped absorbing Lin Ming's power, he would have chosen to use another method long ago. However, since the axe was still taking all his power in, Lin Ming would unleash all he had. Buzz. Finally, following Lin Ming's non-stop efforts, the axe began to show energy fluctuations. Crack, crack. The surface of the axe began to change. The rust on the axe fell off and it became dazzling. However, the change stopped there. Tisk, tisk, you really have a big appetite, Lin Ming could not help but say. Since you're so difficult to please, I won't be waiting on you anymore. Looking at the surroundings where everything had withered, Lin Ming casually threw the axe on the ground. Since it was being so difficult to please, he didn't want to wait on it anymore. Lin Ming turned his head and left. Wait, the minute Lin Ming turned to leave, a voice appeared. The voice was filled with anxiety. I'm out now, aren't I? I haven't acknowledged you as my master yet. Why are you running? The voice continued to say. Lin Ming turned around when he heard the voice. To his surprise, it was an extremely young child who was standing in front of him. Are you the artifact spirit of this axe? Lin Ming looked at the young child and asked. Pangu was quite the extraordinary man. Even the artifact spirit of his weapon was different. To think the artifact spirit of Pangu's weapon was a child. Why are you so little? Lin Ming asked. This artifact spirit looked to be 3 or 4 years old. It was no wonder Lin Ming asked this question. You can't judge a book by its cover, let alone an artifact spirit like me. The artifact spirit rubbed its belly into satisfaction and said, What's your name? Lin Ming asked. Giant spirit, the child said. You're so little, but your name is pretty good. Lin Ming couldn't help but laugh and said. Giant spirit was so small yet it had the word giant in its name. Aren't there the great 4 divine artifacts? You are a divine artifact, but why aren't you on the list? Lin Ming asked. The name Great 4 Divine Artifacts doesn't mean there are only 4 divine artifacts. Besides, what does the ranking of those divine artifacts have anything to do with me? They're just my juniors, and there's nothing great about them anyway. Giant Spirit curled his lips and said, Anyway, do you want the master recognition ceremony or not? The little fatty pouted and said. Lin Ming looked at him and couldn't help but want to pinch his chubby face. Then let's begin. Lin Ming nodded and said. From what he could gather from the little guy's words, his tier was higher than Gandalf's. Either way, a treasure had to be at least a divine artifact to be able to give birth to an artifact spirit. Although the little guy looked little, it wasn't like its strength was judged according to its size. The master recognition ceremony began. The little fatty walked forward and started the process to acknowledge Lin Ming as his master. Boom! As the master recognition ceremony was completed, Pangu's axe turned into a ray of light. What's the name of the axe? Lin Ming asked Giant Spirit. Pangu axe. Giant Spirit said. As the master recognition ceremony was completed, the Pangu axe turned invisible. This is. Lin Ming could feel that although the axe had disappeared, the Pangu axe's presence was everywhere in the world. Wherever he wanted the axe to land, the Pangu axe would appear there. Right now, you can only use the first move of the Pangu axe, invisibility. When you reach the Sage Realm, you can use 3 moves, and when you reach the God tier, you can use the ultimate move, the little fatty said. My current strength far surpasses the Sage Realm though, Lin Ming smiled. I know. Otherwise, I wouldn't have acknowledged you as my master. Your true strength has already reached the peak of the God tier, but the laws are restricting on you. Although the little fatty looked small, he was very knowledgeable. Gandalf, Black Tortoise, Vermilion Bird, Bloodseeker, we have a new friend. Come out and meet him, Lin Ming said. Master. 4 figures appeared at the same time and stood behind Lin Ming. Senior. The moment they saw the little fatty, the 4 lowered their heads at the same time. Even the arrogant Bloodseeker, who usually didn't follow the rules, lowered his head. At least the lot of you are polite. We'll be partners in the future. There's no need to be so formal. The little fatty waved his hand and actually seemed quite dignified. Giant Spirit is a senior? Lin Ming looked at the scene in front of him, and a question appeared in his heart. He knew that although Giant Spirit looked like a child, his tier was very high, but he didn't expect that Gandalf and the others would directly bow to Giant Spirit the minute they appeared. Senior Giant Spirit has already surpassed the tier of divine artifacts, which is why he's our senior, Gandalf explained. He has surpassed the tier of divine artifacts. But didn't you say that the highest tier of a treasure in this world is the divine artifact? Lin Ming asked the question in his heart. The highest tier of treasures in this world is indeed the divine artifact, but Senior Giant Spirit has surpassed this limit. Although Senior Giant Spirit can still be considered a divine artifact, he has also already exceeded this category. Gandalf tried to explain, but the more he did so, the more confused Lin Ming became. Okay, I understand what you mean. Lin Ming paused for a moment before continuing. That is to say, it is still a divine artifact, but it has exceeded the ability of a divine artifact, right? Yes, Gandalf nodded and said, which makes it still a divine artifact. Lin Ming looked at the little fatty, waved his hand and said, half-saint artifact. The little fatty said, half-saint artifact? Lin Ming frowned. A new phrase, the half-saint artifact, had appeared in the little fatty's mouth. You mean there are saint artifacts above the divine artifacts? Gandalf had just confirmed that the highest level of a treasure was the divine artifact, but now there was a new half-saint artifact, and Lin Ming was genuinely confused once more. If there were half-saint artifacts, it meant there were saint artifacts. But in this world, the highest tier a treasure could be was a divine artifact. A half-saint artifact is also a divine artifact, the little fatty said. Are there saint artifacts in this world? Lin Ming asked. No. The little fatty shook his head and said, no saint artifacts are allowed to exist in all the worlds. It was apparent the little fatty was extremely knowledgeable. Do you know anything about the other worlds? Lin Ming folded his arms and asked with a smile. Yes. Master Pangu took me to other worlds, the little fatty nodded. Traveling to the other worlds is possible? Lin Ming frowned when he heard that. He didn't expect that the little fatty had been to other worlds. The 4 divine artifacts were all born from heaven and earth, and they are extremely powerful, the little fatty said. Heaven and earth gave birth to them after all, so heaven and earth had given its strongest power to them as well. Gandalf, Black Tortoise, Vermilion Bird, and Bloodseeker were all born from heaven and earth. The number of divine artifacts is exceptionally small, to begin with. There are a very small number of them that were forged by humans, Giant Spirit said. Yes, this I know, Lin Ming nodded. What about you then? How were you born? Lin Ming asked. I was born when the divine Pangu compressed the heart of the world. They were born from heaven and earth, but I am the heaven and earth myself. Giant Spirit said this with great pride. No wonder they call you senior, Lin Ming nodded. No worlds allow the existence of saint artifacts. For example, cultivators in this world can grasp the rules, but no one can have the power of the laws. Giant Spirit was the peak of this world. When you break through to the Sage realm, you should be able to go to the other worlds. Giant Spirit rubbed his hands, still very much looking forward to going to the other worlds for sightseeing. I see. Now, if he broke through to the Sage realm, he would definitely have the power to go to other worlds. Speaking of this, I have something to do, Lin Ming said. You guys can go now, Lin Ming said. Yes. As Lin Ming spoke, the 4 divine artifacts disappeared. What do you want to do? The little fatty asked. Why do you need to know in such detail? You're just an artifact spirit, don't butt in your master's matters, Lin Ming said. That's true. Then I'll go look for them. The little fatty nodded and disappeared on the spot. Just now you said that I had to break through to the Sage realm, so I'm going to do that now, Lin Ming said. Light. Lin Ming closed his eyes. The first thing he awakened was light magic. Due to the dark in Lin Ming's body, it wasn't easy for Lin Ming to fuse light magic with his energy. There was a possibility of a backlash, and Lin Ming might even be injured. After all, water and fire could still be made to be compatible, but light and darkness were absolutely contradictory. It was impossible to perfectly fuse them. However, as long as the light magic was perfectly awakened, the rest would be simple. After all, either extending the elements or mutating the elements was much easier. Open. Lin Ming said coldly. Behind Lin Ming, a ray of light burst out. God said that since there is no light in this world, let there be light. A sound suddenly appeared around Lin Ming. With this, Lin Ming's body began to twitch. This was because the light that had just appeared caused the dark magic in Lin Ming's body to violently rampage. If it were light elements in the outside world, the dark magic in Lin Ming's body could naturally destroy them. But now, the light magic had appeared from within Lin Ming's body. This caused the dark magic in Lin Ming's body to unconsciously retreat. As the dark magic retreated, something strange happened in Lin Ming's body. The light magic that had just appeared had been annihilated by the dark magic due to the rampage it had gone on just now. Lin Ming's first attempt in awakening light magic had thus failed. Lin Ming closed his eyes and tried to awaken light magic again. With Lin Ming's current god-tier power, he could of course control both dark and light magic to not interfere with each other, but this would only cause the conflict to become greater and greater in the end. Currently, Lin Ming wanted to make it so the light and dark magic were similar to the fire and water elements in his body, to be in a state of fusion, collision, and mutual growth. Only by doing it this way would all the conflicts disappear. Only by doing it this way would Lin Ming's power not be as simple as adding one element on top of another. Moreover, even if he awakened light magic by controlling it to not interfere with dark magic, he still needed to fuse all the magic elements when he wanted to become a chaos mage. If he did not solve this problem now, with the number of magic elements he would have in the future, it would be even more of a problem. God said that there will be light. Lin Ming closed his eyes. Light magic once again appeared in Lin Ming's body. Let there be light. The light magic in Lin Ming's body was once again extinguished. Light and darkness were completely incompatible. This is a problem. When Lin Ming was fusing water and fire magic, there wasn't much of a hindrance. At that time, it was his physical abilities that were more of a problem rather than the compatibility of water and fire. But now, it was extremely difficult to fuse light and darkness. Pooh! Lin Ming opened his eyes and looked at the sky. In the sky, the sun was hot and dazzling. Lin Ming looked directly at the sun. However, the sun was the sun. It wouldn't change just because someone was looking directly at it. Lin Ming stayed in this position for a day. The sun set and the moon rose. Lin Ming continued to look at the moon. He did not move. He did this for 3 days and 3 nights. During these 3 days and 3 nights, Lin Ming did not even blink his eyes. The sun and the moon are opposites, and day and night are thus born from them. When the sun is blocked, it will be a gloomy day. When the moon is blocked, it will be complete darkness. Lin Ming said slowly, the sun, using an ancient saying, is yang, and the moon is yin. This itself is yin and yang. Lin Ming's eyes lit up, and he immediately stood up. Light and darkness are, of course, incompatible. After all, the day is the day. How can the day be night? Lin Ming took a deep breath. At this moment, Lin Ming suddenly understood. Light and darkness were incompatible, but yin and yang complemented each other. God says, let there be light in this world, Lin Ming spoke. With this, a light appeared within Lin Ming's body. Turn. As Lin Ming said this, he controlled the dark magic and light magic in his body to circulate. Light and darkness chased each other within Lin Ming's body. God says, the light is too dim, Lin Ming said again. As he said this, the weak light within Lin Ming's body suddenly became dazzling. Even with this happening, the dark magic and light magic circulation within Lin Ming's body were not affected at all. Light and darkness were still separated. However, as Lin Ming circulated them, they started to slowly merge. They chased each other like two playmates. Light and dark element are not compatible, so why should I force them to be compatible? Lin Ming smiled and said, darkness and light are like yin and yang. That's why no one can compare to the wisdom of the ancestors. Yang 8 diagrams, come out. Lin Ming said coldly. As Lin Ming spoke, light and darkness converged into the Yang 8 diagrams. Tai Chi, creation of all living things. Lin Ming stood up, and a world slowly appeared behind Lin Ming. Boom! As the world behind Lin Ming appeared, dark clouds suddenly gathered in the sky. Then thunder struck. Heavenly tribulations. A few knowledgeable Sage Realm experts looked at the stormy clouds in the sky and couldn't help but bite their tongues. These were the heavenly tribulations that would only appear when someone advanced to the god tier. Could it be that Lin Ming has broken through at this moment? A Sage Realm expert had his brows furrowed. The many Sage Realm experts were extremely excited. If Lin Ming had successfully broken through to the god tier, then they would be able to reach the god tier as well, since most of them were at the peak of the Sage Realm. Boom! The first thunder tribulation descended. The thunder tribulation didn't land on Lin Ming's body. Instead, it landed behind Lin Ming. It landed on the world that had just appeared behind Lin Ming. Just like that, the world was destroyed by the thunder tribulation. How dare you? Lin Ming's face, which had just brightened up, turned gloomy once again. When a world that had just appeared behind Lin Ming was destroyed by the thunder tribulation, Lin Ming was also affected. Lin Ming leaped up and charged straight toward the source of the thunder tribulation. Boom! As Lin Ming charged forward, a huge bolt of lightning struck down. The power contained within the lightning was so powerful that even a Sage Realm expert would be reduced to gas if they came into contact with it. HMPH! Lin Ming harumphed coldly and raised his hand to shatter the lightning into pieces. From the depths of the thunder tribulation, a voice filled with confusion appeared. You're courting death. The voice pierced through the clouds and landed on Lin Ming's body. 9 thunder tribulations. The many Sage Realm experts were hiding as far as possible, but they still felt their hearts palpitate. They wouldn't be able to withstand even a fraction of such a force. Boom! The first thunder tribulation caused Lin Ming to lose his balance. Boom! The second thunder tribulation caused Lin Ming to slow down. Boom! The third thunder tribulation caused Lin Ming to stop. Boom! The fourth thunder tribulation caused a trace of blood to appear at the corner of Lin Ming's mouth. Boom! The fifth thunder tribulation numbed Lin Ming's body. How dare you still move forward? You reckless thing. The voice from earlier appeared once again. Me? Reckless? Lin Ming smiled coldly when he heard this voice. You should know that I had only been using my physical body to withstand your thunder tribulations. If you ask me, your lightning tribulation is really trash. Lin Ming smiled. The light magic within his body was released, and all the negative effects on Lin Ming's body disappeared. It's been a long time since I've heard such words. The master of the voice deep within the lightning tribulation seemed to be amused. I admit that although you're only at tier 10, you do possess the power of a god tier. Although I don't know how you are able to possess such power at tier 10, I can tell you very clearly that your power is still lacking. The voice in the depth said. He had indeed sensed that Lin Ming was extraordinary. Otherwise, he would not have spoken so much nonsense with Lin Ming. I'll give you a great gift. The master of a voice in the depths of the clouds waved his hand, and a purple thunder appeared. Wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. The voice in the depths of the clouds said, You must know that I'm not the god of thunder. I simply represent the heavenly tribulations. The authority of the heavenly tribulations cannot be provoked by anyone. Blah, 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 you're really long-winded, Lin Ming sneered. Golden cudgel. Lin Ming snorted. As Lin Ming spoke, the ruby golden cudgel appeared in Lin Ming's hand. Break. With this, the golden cudgel was swung and smashed at the lightning. The purple thunder was smashed into pieces. Fuse. The voice from the depths of the clouds said. As the voice appeared, wind, rain, lightning, and thunder tribulation appeared. All 4 of them. Then they merged into one. Is this it? Lin Ming raised his head and said with a cold smile. Bloodseeker. Lin Ming said. The wheels of wrath appeared in Lin Ming's hand. One strike breaks thousands. Lin Ming took a step forward and appeared again in the distance. Let me see your true face. Lin Ming's figure appeared in the depths of the clouds. How dare you? The master of the voice was now completely enraged. Boom! The 4 tribulations that had just fused landed on Lin Ming's body. Tai Chi! Lin Ming raised his hand, and the Tai Chi 8 diagrams appeared above his head. Boom! All the power was blocked and converted. I'll let you off for now. If you see my face, you'll definitely die. The master of the voice in the depths of the clouds was panicking. You're only an intermediate god tier. What do you mean by saying you'd let me off? Lin Ming sneered. The person who had cast the thunder tribulations just now was only at the god tier. After all, the thunder tribulations were prepared for those who had yet to reach the god tier, and were in the process of breaking through to the god tier. Thus, an intermediate god tier was more than enough to set up the thunder tribulation. Unfortunately, the one facing the tribulations today was a monster like Lin Ming. I'm an intermediate god tier, but since I'm casting the thunder tribulations, I represent heaven's order. The master of the voice was anxious. Laws. With this, the master of the voice used the power of heaven's order, and Lin Ming's surroundings instantly changed. At this moment, Lin Ming felt a wave of pressure. No one could resist the power of laws. This was because everything in the world was created by laws. Destroy. The master in the depths of the clouds said viciously. As he spoke, Lin Ming's body began to split. No one could resist the power of laws. As long as one was in this world, there was nowhere to hide. In this world, laws were absolute. Buzz. Suddenly, a palm struck out. With the appearance of this palm, all the laws stopped. When Lin Ming raised his head to look, he noticed that a figure had appeared. This figure was the one who had helped Lin Ming block all the attacks in the Battle of Fate's trial grounds. Heaven's order. Lin Ming looked at this figure and exclaimed, Bullshit, you're not heaven's order. You. The voice from the depths of the clouds sounded. With a light wave of the figure's hand, the voice from the depths of the clouds stopped abruptly. Who exactly are you? Lin Ming frowned and asked. Even if heaven's order had emotions, it would never help him to this extent. Furthermore, it was absurd to kill the person it had sent to cast the thunder tribulations. Moreover, it could be seen that the figure had just broken the laws just now instead of controlling them. This was enough to prove that this figure was not the so-called Heaven's Order. You don't have to care about this yet. The figure smiled and disappeared. Your small world is not bad. To think a tier 10 can have a small world. If word got out, even the god tiers would be angered to death. Before the figure disappeared, his voice entered Lin Ming's ears. Are you me? Lin Ming asked loudly. However, the figure did not reply and had already disappeared without a trace. The power he possesses is truly terrifying. He is definitely an existence that has surpassed the god tier. Lin Ming could not help but sigh in amazement. In the Battle of Fate's trial grounds, so many god-tier experts had attacked together. Even if the god of fire and the others were awakened together and were at the peak of their power, they still wouldn't be able to block the attack with their combined efforts. However, this figure had just appeared and dissipated all of their power. Furthermore, he had forced each of the god tiers to hand over 1,000 years' worth of cultivation. It was needless to describe the power he possessed. But now, to think he was able to void the laws with such ease. Those were laws, not the so-called rules and anything like that. Anything one could see in the world was formed by the laws. In this world, laws were absolute. However, in the face of this figure, none of these seemed to have any effect. What Lin Ming had asked just now was not without reason. It was because he could feel an extremely familiar feeling from this figure. The figure felt too familiar. It was as if the figure was himself. That was why Lin Ming had asked the seemingly absurd question, "Are you me?" In the depths of the void, an extremely proud voice appeared. "Haha, I didn't expect that I would be so smart at that time. But then again, I've always been extremely smart. It's a good thing that my temper is better now. Otherwise, I would have destroyed the current Heaven's Order and made the world give birth to another one." The voice in the depths of the void gradually grew faint. At this moment, in Lin Ming's world, an illusory figure was trembling. Lin Ming didn't know that even if he did break through to the god tier in the future, there wouldn't be any more heavenly tribulations. That was because the true Heaven's Order didn't dare to do so anymore. At this moment, Lin Ming had already adjusted his state of mind. No matter who that figure was, he could tell the figure was on his side. Tai Chi gives birth to yin and yang. Lin Ming closed his eyes again, and behind Lin Ming, a world appeared once again. Lin Ming's body rumbled. Dark clouds covered the sky once again, but nothing happened for a long time. The chosen one to cast the heavenly tribulations was dead. This was something that had never happened in many years. Or rather, it could be said that this had never happened since the birth of the world. Everyone knew that the tier of this chosen one might not be very high, but the chosen one grasped a portion of the power of laws. No matter how strong one's power was, one could only obediently wait for death when facing the power of laws. Therefore, it had been impossible for any accidents to happen to the chosen one. But now, an accident had happened. Furthermore, Heaven's Order itself hadn't made a single move up until now. The appearance of the small world behind Lin Ming should have already offended Heaven's Order. Now, Lin Ming should have been suppressed by Heaven's Order, and even his existence should have been erased. After all, being able to create a small world was already a threat to Heaven's Order. Hence, a strange phenomenon appeared between heaven and earth. No chosen one dared to get close to Lin Ming. This was because the previously chosen one had died when he cast Heaven's tribulations on Lin Ming. The most crucial point was that Heaven's Order was still unmoving. Even if their strength was a little stronger than the person who unleashed Heaven's tribulations just now, but facing someone who could resist the power of laws, they weren't any different at all. It was just like how humans looked at ants. In the eyes of humans, weren't the ants with greater strength and the ants with lesser strength all the same? Humans could crush an ant with a single finger. Thus it didn't matter whether the ant had a status or strength in the ant colony or not. At this moment, Lin Ming didn't know all the behind-the-scenes action. Therefore, Lin Ming could stay calm and continue to perfect his small world. Now Lin Ming's small world had already taken shape. "This space has surpassed the space of the stupa," Lin Ming said. Lin Ming looked at his small world and was very satisfied. However, there was no life in the small world. It was like a void, empty and full of nothingness. "Come out." Lin Ming controlled his small world in an attempt for it to give birth to living things. However, no matter how he did it, there was no life. Though stones and other things did appear in the void. Stones, land, and other lifeless things can appear, but living things cannot. Lin Ming now understood this matter. Even a single blade of weed could not appear. Lin Ming plucked a few weeds outside and put them into his small world. However, as soon as the weeds entered, they disappeared without a trace. The laws of the two worlds were completely different. Therefore, the weeds couldn't survive in Lin Ming's small world, because this was Lin Ming's world. It was completely different from the outside world. Go! Lin Ming plucked a few more weeds and put them into the small world again. This time, because Lin Ming was controlling them, the weeds didn't disappear. Under Lin Ming's control, the weeds grew crazily. In this world, the weeds were at most 1 to 2 meters tall. But in Lin Ming's world, they grew crazily to over 1,000 meters. Even weeds, like how humans could at most be 2 meters tall, had a maximum height they could grow to. However, in Lin Ming's small world, the weeds grew unrestrained. They grew crazily. If Lin Ming wanted to, he could make them grow to a height of tens of thousands of meters. This was because the original height limit on those weeds was a law, and such a law was being changed in Lin Ming's small world. He could do this because he had absolute control over his small world, which meant even the laws here were set by Lin Ming. If Lin Ming wished for it, it would be a reality in the small world. This was also why Lin Ming was attacked by heaven's tribulation when he first created his small world. After one created a small world, one had essentially grasped the laws. Whoosh! Lin Ming entered his small world. Water! Lin Ming drew with his finger, and a river appeared in front of him. Earth! Lin Ming spoke again, and soil appeared under his feet. Stone! As Lin Ming said this, sand and rocks appeared. Vegetation! Lin Ming's eyes flew open as he said this. However, no vegetation appeared. No matter how Lin Ming used his power, nothing changed. This? The god of fire frowned and asked in the depths of Lin Ming's consciousness. Although they were all at the god tier, they had never seen a small world like Lin Ming's before. It could be said that even the most powerful god tier existences could not create a small world. This should be to Lin Ming's small world. The demon god had seen some records, so he knew a little about the matter. Small world. After hearing the demon god's words, the great sage asked. They had never heard of the term small world. Yes, small world, a world that belongs only to Lin Ming. Although the demon god knew about the existence of small worlds, he didn't know much about the details. This was because the records regarding small worlds had all been destroyed by Heaven's order. Heaven's order did this to prohibit the birth of small worlds, because to it, small worlds were a threat. As such, even if one created a small world by accident, Heaven's tribulations would fall, and laws would also come to destroy the small world. Right now, what was left of the relevant records was only a few remnant pages. Looks like I still can't create living things yet. Lin Ming let out a breath and said. Lin Ming didn't force it. Everything needed to be done step by step. Lin Ming had just created a small world, so he was very unfamiliar with its use and operation. But he also knew that he would be using a lot of the small world in the future, thus he wasn't in a hurry. Since everything in this small world will realize according to my laws, wouldn't it be much easier for me to awaken my magic system in this world? Lin Ming smiled and said. This was a shortcut. Open. Lin Ming said coldly. As Lin Ming spoke, all the unawakened magic elements in Lin Ming's body were instantly awakened. On top of that, all the newly awakened magic elements advanced to the peak of Tier 10. As expected, this is a shortcut. Lin Ming nodded. However, Lin Ming wasn't greedy. After awakening all the magic elements, he didn't attempt to fuse them into the chaos element. Instead, Lin Ming took a step out and exited the small world. He was preparing to fuse his magic in the main world. Boom! As Lin Ming appeared, the surrounding space began to reject him greatly. Behind Lin Ming, a black hole appeared, and the space was squeezing tight on him. HMPH. Lin Ming raised his hand and blocked the surrounding pressure. What's going on? Lin Ming felt that he was currently incompatible with this world. The main world and the energy in his body seemed to be repelling each other as the law energy within began to collide crazily. As expected, there are no shortcuts in this world, Lin Ming sighed and said. Lin Ming had instantly awakened all his magic elements and had also instantly advanced all of them to the peak of Tier 10, but now, he was being rejected as if he wasn't from this world. Ding! The system has detected that the host's energy is in conflict with the main world's law energy. Does the host wish for assimilation? At this moment, the system's voice sounded. No. Lin Ming immediately rejected it. Does the host wish for assimilation? After Lin Ming rejected it, the system's voice appeared once more. No. Lin Ming coldly said. Since there was no shortcut to take, then Lin Ming wouldn't take the system's shortcut either. At this moment, a cold snort sounded from deep within the void. In such a long time, it was extremely rare for the system to be rejected. On top of that, the same person had rejected the same matter twice. The existence in the void looked into the depths. It's still that tier 10 brat. After such a long time, he's still a tier 10. He's not worthy of being my attention. To think he rejected the offer though he's just such a weakling. HMPH. In the void, the voice looked at Lin Ming and spoke continuously. At this moment, Lin Ming could also feel that someone was staring at him. Lin Ming raised his head and met the gaze. At this moment, the existence in the void changed his tone from being disdainful to being confused. How can a tier 10 brat notice me? The existence frowned. Something's not right. With this, the existence began to scrutinize Lin Ming. Peak God tier power. Possesses a small world. All elemental magic. As he observed, the existence's voice gradually changed. When he only looked at the surface, Lin Ming was merely a tier 10 mage. However, the more he observed, the more he realized how terrifying Lin Ming was. The system can bestow god tier weapons, but the system can't bestow all elemental magic and small worlds. This existence frowned and stood up. Once he reaches the peak of the god tier, he can be my meal, but his tier is now only at tier 10. If I attack now, I'll break the customs. But if he can have such power at tier 10, if he reaches the god tier, then won't he be? The existence's brows were tightly knitted. When Lin Ming reached the god tier, his power would be immeasurable. After all, the current Lin Ming was only at tier 10, yet he possessed the power at the peak of the god tier, and also owned a small world. If Lin Ming reached the god tier, the existence couldn't even imagine how powerful he would be. Therefore, the existence's heart stirred. He was yearning to kill Lin Ming at this moment. What's wrong? You seem to have something on your mind. A voice suddenly appeared beside this existence. Come and take a look. This existence pointed at Lin Ming to the person who had arrived. It's fine. Isn't it normal for those who have our systems to be extraordinary? Besides, if he's ordinary, let alone being useless to the system, he won't even be of any use to us. The figure smiled and said. This the existence frowned and thought for a moment. Moreover, if you take this fellow's life now, you'll break the customs and lose more than you gain. The person next to him spoke again. But the figure in the depths of the void still wanted to say something. Besides, god tier is nothing. We won't make a move unless they reach god tier anyway. Plus, in this world, the highest limit is the god tier, so what are you afraid of? Even if there is an accident, isn't there heaven's order to help us? The figure next to him continued. That's true. Fine then, I'll allow him to grow first. The figure in the depths of the void sighed and said. In the depths of the void, the few figures closed their eyes again. At this moment, Lin Ming had put away his small world. All elements, break. Lin Ming said coldly. With this, all the magic elements in his body that had been created in the small world disappeared. Assimilate? Lin Ming suddenly recalled what the system had said. The system had offered to assimilate his energy with the world for him. At the moment, Lin Ming had suppressed all his energy and hid it, which made it so he didn't have to suffer the rejection of this world for the time being. Then he started thinking about how to assimilate the energy within his body with the main world. His magic elements were awakened in his small world, which was probably why they were rejected. But then again, Lin Ming didn't feel any sense of rejection when he first came to this world even though he wasn't part of this world. Could it be that without power, he wouldn't be rejected by this world? My original energy won't be rejected by the small world, but my energy awakened in the small world will be rejected if I enter the main world. Thinking of this, Lin Ming closed his eyes. Lin Ming was observing the newly awakened magic elements in his body to see if they were any different from those in the main world. He found that they were the same, exactly the same. It was the laws used to form them that were not the same. It's because of the laws. Lin Ming finally understood the reason. The system could change the laws without any requirements regarding the host's power. Lin Ming could feel that the system's power hadn't changed at all since he first obtained it, which made it a heaven-defying existence. Just now, after Lin Ming rejected the system's offer for assimilation, his spiritual sense had sensed a gaze watching him. He knew that it should be the creator of the system. To be able to create such a heaven-defying existence like the system, the creator's strength was unimaginable. One thing Lin Ming was sure of was that the creator was definitely an extremely powerful and terrifying existence. Looks like the road ahead is still very long. Lin Ming lowered his head and exhaled as he spoke. Originally, Lin Ming had dreamed of becoming a Sage Realm Mage because, in his original world, Sage Realm Mages were the most powerful existences and the true masters of his world. However, as Lin Ming continued to grow, he had now become the hope to break through past the peak of the God tier. And now Lin Ming was only a tier 10, yet he had the power of a God tier. However, the more powerful Lin Ming became, the more he was aware that the path of growth he needed to take was longer. Forget it. I'll first assimilate all the awakened energy with this world, then I'll think of other things. Lin Ming exhaled. Assimilate. Lin Ming copied the law energy of the awakened elements in the main world onto the magic elements he awakened in the small world. I should give them the law energy first, then when I fuse them, I will remove all law energy. Lin Ming decided. As Lin Ming copied and pasted the laws, all magic elements had been awakened, and the magic system now wouldn't be rejected by this world at all. All elemental magic awakened. Lin Ming opened his eyes and said as he stood up. Lin Ming knew that only after he removed the law energy of the world from his magic energy would the power be truly his. I wonder if that person can fight with the creator of the system? Lin Ming lowered his head and could not help but think of this question. At this moment, Lin Ming did not know how ridiculous his question was. Lin Ming has already awakened all the magic elements. The demon god spoke in the depths of Lin Ming's consciousness. So fast? The great sage frowned. He had never thought that Lin Ming could awaken all the magic elements in such a short period. It feels like everything happened in the blink of an eye. Lin Ming has always been unbelievable. The god of fire couldn't help but say. Lin Ming has accomplished something that no one has been able to accomplish for hundreds of thousands of years with such ease. At this moment, the diagram spirit was in a daze. This is a good thing. Everyone, smile. The demon god made an expression and said, it is a good thing. However, these days I keep feeling like I'm living in a dream. The god of fire touched his head and said, I've never seen all elemental magic before. The demon god nodded. Now, we only have to wait for Lin Ming to fuse all his magic elements into the chaos element and become a god tier expert. At that time, Lin Ming will be able to revive us and would have also broke the god tier barrier. The demon god continued. I can break the god tier barrier now, but I want to wait a little longer. Lin Ming suddenly joined their conversation. The four of them weren't surprised at all. After all, the current Lin Ming possessed divine sense. It was extremely normal for him to be able to communicate with them. The power in my body right now should have reached the god tier, Lin Ming said. Right now Lin Ming's power had indeed reached the god tier. Furthermore, because he had all elemental magic, Lin Ming's understanding of the essence of the world had reached its peak, added by the fact that Lin Ming had created a small world. At this moment, he already understood the essence of the world. If I want to break through to the god tier now, I can do it with just a thought, Lin Ming said. Wasn't this the goal of all of us since the beginning? Why aren't you breaking through yet? The god of fire asked. If Lin Ming broke through to the god tier now, their inhuman and ghostly state would be over. Moreover, once a monster like Lin Ming reached the god tier, he would be able to take revenge for them. I can sense that if I break through now, there will be danger. Lin Ming shook his head and said, Danger? You mean heaven's tribulation? After hearing Lin Ming's words, the demon god asked. They had all been god tier experts before, thus they knew about everything regarding the god tier like the back of their hands. With your strength, heaven's tribulation shouldn't be considered dangerous, the great sage said at this moment. I know, but the danger I sense isn't from heaven's tribulation. It's something else. Lin Ming shook his head and said. Lin Ming was not the slightest bit worried about the so-called heaven's tribulation. After all, he had already experienced heaven's tribulation during the first appearance of his small world. However, Lin Ming kept feeling that there was a gaze staring at him, and the owner of the gaze was extremely dangerous. The dangerous feeling it gave him was such that Lin Ming wasn't even sure if the existence that had saved him twice would be a match for the owner of the gaze. Therefore, Lin Ming decided to wait until his strength was truly sufficient, to the point he could do things that would shake the world. Otherwise, he would only bring himself trouble. Besides, even if the previous god tier experts returned, Lin Ming wasn't worried at all. Then, now the demon god asked. Since the current Lin Ming didn't want to advance his cultivation nor did he want to fuse the chaos element, they had no idea what he wanted to do. What are you old guys so worried about? No wonder you only have a remnant soul left. It's all because you guys worry about everything. A voice interrupted their conversation. Senior Pangu. Lin Ming turned around and was surprised to see that it was Pangu. He didn't expect that Pangu would come to him. Pangu, how can your body be indestructible? Not just that. Not only was Pangu's body indestructible, but even his strength had also improved a lot. They could tell, because they were feeling a strong sense of oppression from Pangu's aura. And? Pangu smiled and asked, Pangu, there has never been any problem with you. Why? At this moment, the demon god asked out of curiosity. Why have I been hiding for so long? Pangu asked. That's right. The god of fire nodded. What do you mean by hiding? I told you that you guys worry too much. If I wanted to, I could break through this trifling barrier with a single hand. As for those god-tier experts, I could kill them all with a single strike of my axe. Do you think I need to hide? Pangu sneered and said. No one doubted his words, because Pangu could do so. The aura on his body was clearly telling them the abilities he had. Then why haven't we heard anything from you? The great sage asked. Do you think everyone is like you? Pangu looked at the great sage's remnant soul and said with a smile. The great sage did not say anything. He dared to fight the emperor, but he could not help but be respectful to Pangu. Can you tell us exactly why? The demon god asked. Very well, Pangu nodded. Do you know about Heaven's Seal? Pangu asked. Heaven's Seal? The god of fire rubbed his head and frowned. No, please enlighten me. The demon god also shook his head and said, although those god-tier fellows were doing it for themselves, their actions are in line with the great Tao. Seeing that they did not know anything, Pangu said, in line with the great Tao? They are so heartless and can be described as animals. How can they be in line with the great Tao? The god of fire, who had a fiery temper, retorted. If the heavens have emotions, the heavens would die. The great Tao is merciless. Pangu paused for a moment before saying, so, what is the use of Heaven's Seal? The demon god asked. Naturally, it's to nurture the world, Pangu answered. Do you know how much the world has suffered from the appearance of each god-tier expert? Although we will also give the world some energy after we become god-tier experts, this amount of energy is like a drop in the bucket when it comes to the depletion of energy in the world, Pangu began to explain. If this continues, the magical elements and all kinds of energy in the world will be exhausted. In the end, there will be no new mages or other professions. Pangu took the matter apart for them and continued, in the past hundreds of thousands of years, the path to the god tier has been blocked by those guys. Therefore, the energy elements in our world are extremely rich. The reason why the many kinds of professions were still active was precisely because of this. In fact, our world has accumulated hundreds of thousands of years of fate, and finally succeeded in waiting for this little guy. Pangu pointed at Lin Ming and said, Me? Lin Ming said in surprise. What did he have to do with all this? That's right. You're not from this world, are you? Pangu nodded and directly said Lin Ming's identity. You came to this world thanks to the hundreds of thousands of years worth of fate accumulated by our world. All that fate is yours, which is why you can have such terrifying power in such a short time, Pangu said. Lin Ming was confused. In Lin Ming's opinion, the reason why he could grow so quickly was actually very much related to the system. However, Pangu was now saying that it was because he had the fate of this world that had been accumulated for the past 100,000 years. This made Lin Ming somewhat confused. Could it be that the system was bestowed by this world? Now, from what Pangu had said, the possibility that the system was given to him by this world could not be ruled out. Even I envy your good fortune, Pangu said. The god of fire and demon god were not the only ones who envied Lin Ming's good fortune. Even Pangu, who was much more powerful than the demon god, was extremely envious. To be honest, over such a long period, the barrier did loosen once, Pangu said. It loosened once? Hearing Pangu's words, Lin Ming frowned. Since the barrier had loosened once over the course of 100,000 years, it shouldn't have been so difficult to break. After all, there were many sage realm experts in the world, and there was no lack of geniuses among them, yet why were none able to break the barrier? That's right. However, I've strengthened it a few times, so no one in this world has been able to break it, Pangu said. What? Upon hearing this, the demon god was immediately agitated. Over the many years, they had searched high and low for ways to break the barrier. Now, they were only left with their last hope, which was to make Lin Ming become a chaos mage and break the barrier. They had never expected that after so much effort, the final reason would make them want to vomit blood. To think the mastermind behind all of this was Pangu. If it were not for Pangu, the barrier would have been broken long ago. If you want to break the barrier now, I won't stop you, Pangu said to Lin Ming, and continued, after all, fate has been accumulating for so long for you to appear. I can't intervene with such fate. I'm not breaking it now. Lin Ming shook his head and said, why? With your current strength. It should be enough for you to break the barrier, Pangu asked, confused. In his opinion, Lin Ming should be extremely eager to break the barrier. Because although heaven's tribulations is not of a concern to me, there is still danger beyond this world, Lin Ming spoke honestly. There is still danger beyond this world? You don't have to worry about that with me here, Pangu frowned and said, after all, I'm the guardian of this world. As he spoke, energy ripples appeared around him. It turned out that Pangu had actually merged into the world. In this world, I can control part of heaven's order. Heaven's order is the supreme existence in this world. No one can resist it. Pangu's voice resounded throughout the world. No matter what dangers there are, I can help you remove them. Pangu said with great confidence. Pangu's power far surpassed that of the ordinary peak god tier experts. Added by the fact that he could control a portion of heaven's order's power, he did have the confidence to say this. It's all right, however, Lin Ming still shook his head. He was aware that Pangu was absolutely powerful, but the feeling that made his heart tremble was something that even Pangu could not get rid of. It was better to rely on oneself than to rely on someone else. Lin Ming would only level up and break the god tier barrier when he was truly powerful. He had a premonition that after becoming a god tier, he would have to face many things. Lin Ming believed in this premonition. Besides, he could sense that if he directly broke through to the god tier now without increasing his foundation, he would not be able to deal with those troublesome things when the time came. Even if Pangu had grasped part of heaven's order now, he was still unable to deal with them. I want to build my strength further. Lin Ming did not want to explain more to Pangu as he didn't want to make Pangu feel that he wasn't trusted. Do you still need to build up your strength? Pangu glanced at Lin Ming and couldn't help but ask. Yes, it's always better to have more, Lin Ming nodded. I can send you to another world. Maybe that'll help you build up your strength. Pangu stopped persuading Lin Ming and suggested instead. You can send me to another world. Hearing this, Lin Ming was instantly interested. If he could go to another world and absorb the power there or awaken some special power unique to the other world, it would indeed make him more powerful. As the guardian of the world, I naturally have the right to do so. It's just nice that you're only at tier 10, so no one will notice you even if you're from another world, Pangu explained. Kid, no one actually pays attention to whether you're monstrous or not, Pangu continued. The first thing most people would notice was what they could see on the surface. Only when one was truly outstanding and warranted their attention would people try to understand one. Otherwise, no one would pay attention to one. Being a mere tier 10 mage, if Lin Ming didn't show any outstanding achievements and kept to himself, no one would pay attention to him, even if he was sent on a world exchange by the guardian of a world. After all, on the surface, his tier was simply too low. I see you're interested. Looking at the suddenly excited Lin Ming, Pangu sneered and said, after all, the universe is huge, and I want to take a look. Lin Ming chuckled and said, well, I know your scruples, and I respect your choice, Pangu said seriously. It's true that there are dangers in the void beyond the world, but they won't attack you because of the existence of heaven's order. They can only hide in the void like rats so that they won't be killed by heaven's order. Pangu had seen through Lin Ming's thoughts. What worried Lin Ming the most was indeed the existence in the void. If those monsters in the void appear and enter this world, are you a match for them, Senior Pangu? Lin Ming asked very seriously. I don't think so. A group of monsters that heaven's order can't even deal with after they enter the void. You can imagine their strength. Pangu spoke very frankly, admitting that he was not a match for them. All right then, Lin Ming sighed. The hope that had appeared for a second was completely shattered at this moment. Do you need time to prepare before I send you to another world? Pangu asked Lin Ming. No, Lin Ming shook his head and said, let me tell you this first. In our world, because of the god tier barrier, the biggest threats are only at the sage realm, Pangu said. By saying this, Pangu was trying to remind Lin Ming that although the biggest dangers he would face in this world would at most be sage realm experts, who couldn't pose a threat to Lin Ming at all. In another world where the god tier barrier was non-existent and god tier experts walked the ground, the situation would be different. After all, The difference between a god-tier existence and a sage realm existence was like the difference between heaven and earth. In the other worlds, those who could bring danger to Lin Ming were god-tier existences. On top of that, the current Lin Ming was aware that even the god-tier was not the end. For example, an existence like Pangu had already surpassed the ordinary god-tier. Since there was an existence like Pangu in Lin Ming's world, there would definitely be such existences in other worlds. Otherwise, how could it be called an exchange? Such an existence could indeed pose a threat to Lin Ming. However, as the exchange, the world guardians would, under normal circumstances, not make a move against him. I understand. However, I don't have any family or friends, so I have nothing to worry about, Lin Ming said with a smile. You're right. At your age, it's time for you to find someone to dual cultivate with. It's not a bad choice for you to go get a partner in another world now. After Pangu heard that, he burst into laughter. I, Lin Ming, am not such a person. Lin Ming went with the flow and put on a show as well. Tisk, tisk, look at you. You really know how to act. At this time, the demon god also smiled and said, Oh right, he's the exchange, but you guys can't go with him. Pangu glanced at the smiling demon god and said, Can't go with him? But we're in the depths of his consciousness. If we are separated. Hearing this, the demon god's smile instantly fell. So what if you're separated? Isn't it just a matter of reconstructing a body? It's just a small matter, Pangu sneered. He knew what the demon god was thinking. Big brother, can you reconstruct our bodies? The demon god's acting was really good. Nonsense, Pangu snorted. Big brother, since you have always been around, why did you make us wait for so long? Do you have any idea how we have been living for such a long time? The demon god said with tears in his eyes. If the lot of you had been resurrected earlier, the barrier of the world would have been broken by you. Besides, the first thing you guys would do after you were resurrected would be to seek revenge. At that time, the world would be divided into two just because of you guys. Pangu sneered and said, Resurrect them earlier? No way. If it weren't for Lin Ming, Pangu wouldn't even care about this matter. This world has finally recovered and is thriving. I can't let you ruin all this, Pangu added. Yes, yes. Big brother, you are right. Please rest assured, as long as you resurrect us, we will absolutely obey your command. We will never do anything that goes against the world, the demon god said with a cheeky smile. If you dare, only your souls will be left, Pangu said in a domineering manner. Come out. With a wave of his hand, the souls of the four appeared in his hand. Go on then. Pangu looked at Lin Ming and said, Leave them to me. When you come back, you will be able to see them in their prime. Pangu knew that Lin Ming valued friendship, so he asked Lin Ming to let go of his misgivings. Thank you, Senior. Lin Ming hurriedly cupped his hands and bowed. Pangu of Planet Azure requests to send exchange Lin Ming. Fellow friends of Planet Quindai, please open the exchange channel. Pangu spoke loudly, and a wave of energy rippled out as his voice rang out. This power was extremely profound, and it actually a portion of the power of Heaven's order. After all, only the power of Heaven's order could connect the two worlds, and only by borrowing a portion of Heaven's order's power could Lin Ming go to another world directly. Lin Ming, you must be careful after you're there. After all, other than our planet Azure, the other worlds are extremely dangerous. The schemes and whatnot on planet Azure would just be like playing house in the other worlds. Pangu looked at Lin Ming and reminded him again. Okay, I understand. Lin Ming nodded and said, May I ask what is the tier of the exchange? The voice of the other party appeared in Pangu's ears. Tier 10. Pangu answered. Very well. The voice of the other party appeared as well as a connecting passage. Go. Pangu grabbed Lin Ming and threw him into the passage. Lin Ming naturally did not resist. Who was to say the method of teleportation was not to be thrown anyway? Buzz. When Lin Ming opened his eyes once again, the surroundings had changed greatly. As soon as he appeared, he found himself to be surrounded by a group of people. Huh. Lizardmen? Lin Ming exclaimed. The lizardmen hissed with their tongues flickering as they surrounded Lin Ming. The energy in Lin Ming's body started to fluctuate, and he was ready to attack at any time. The guardian of this world is too irresponsible, throwing me into flames like this, Lin Ming couldn't help but complain. Boom! Just as Lin Ming said this, dark clouds covered the sky, and thunder fell. Senior, I was just speaking nonsense. Please forgive me, Senior, Lin Ming hurriedly said. Only after Lin Ming said this did the dark clouds in the sky disappear. How narrow-minded was the guardian of this world, to think he intended to strike him with lightning just for complaining once. Fortunately, Lin Ming had reacted quickly. Hiss! Lin Ming was still on guard when the surrounding lizardmen all knelt. Hiss! The surrounding lizardmen shouted. An old lizardman with a walking stick walked towards Lin Ming. Hiss! 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 The old lizardman's tongue flickered as he gesticulated, seemingly to have said many things. Unfortunately, Lin Ming couldn't understand him. Speak! Lin Ming tapped on the lizardman, and the lizardman was shocked to find that he could speak. You must be a god. The old lizardman knelt and shouted. Hiss! As the old lizardman knelt, the surrounding lizards made sounds again. No, 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 Lin Ming waved his hand. When we summoned the consciousness of a god, you appeared. So you must be a god. The old lizardman spoke unswervingly. We of the lizardman clan are about to face annihilation. God, please save us. Lin Ming finally understood that the guardian of this world really knew how to choose a location for him to enter this world. The guardian of this world had made him become a so-called god. God, please save the lizardman clan. The old lizardman shouted again. Why not? Lin Ming nodded and said. God has agreed, God has agreed. The old lizardman jumped excitedly. Following Lin Ming's agreement, all the surrounding lizardmen were extremely excited. After all, in their eyes, as long as a god made a move, everything could be resolved. Lin Ming, on the other hand, would normally not meddle in these matters. Now that he had agreed, there was a reason. It was because Lin Ming had noticed an infant in the arms of a female lizardman. This infant gave him an extremely familiar feeling. He wondered why the child of a lizardman would be a human infant. Give me the child. Lin Ming pointed at the child in the female lizardman's arms and said. Hiss! The female lizardman was extremely scared, but she didn't dare to disobey. It's real Lin Ming had chosen to stay, because the baby had given him a strong sense of familiarity. How did he appear here? Lin Ming turned around, looked at the old man, and asked. He appeared the last time we worshipped God. The old lizardman hurriedly replied. Did something like this always happen when you worshipped your god? Lin Ming frowned and asked. If that was the case, how many innocent people had been transferred here because of their actions? One had to know that although he was powerful, not every person summoned would have great power. Without great power, one could only wait for death here, just like this innocent baby. This child is the first to appear, and you are the second. The old lizardman quickly replied. We firmly believe that this child is the god sent by the heavens to us. However, he is still young, so we have been doing our best to take care of him. All the good things in the lizardman clan have been given to this child first. The old lizardman pointed to a room and said. Lin Ming scanned it with his spiritual sense and knew that the old lizardman wasn't lying. This baby had been taken care of extremely well. On account of this baby, I will help you once. Lin Ming said. This child, is he yours? Seeing that Lin Ming's feelings for the child were unusual, the old lizardman asked. No, we just come from the same world. Lin Ming shook his head and said. The same world? The world of gods? The old lizardman was dumbfounded. Did gods also have an entire world? Don't ask so many questions, just know I will solve your problem, Lin Ming said. All right, the old lizardman nodded. Thank you, God. Please rest first. Tomorrow we will face the danger of extermination. When the time comes, please help us, God. The old lizardman sent Lin Ming to the most luxurious room. Of course, the room was very simple by Lin Ming's standards. It could be seen that the lizardmen were truly miserable to be constantly on the verge of extinction. To think you came from the same world that I did. Lin Ming caressed the baby's stomach and said. Hell. Looking at Lin Ming, the baby couldn't help but giggle. Then, he fell into a deep sleep. By just holding the baby in his arms, Lin Ming could tell that the baby was currently extremely weak. Although the lizardmen had treated the baby as a descendant of God, how could they know how to take care of a human child? An ordinary human baby didn't have any resistance or anything of the sort. Buzz. Lin Ming's fingertip surged with power as he rotated it above the baby's head a few times. The baby's body instantly recovered. Other than that, Lin Ming used an extremely minute amount of strength to strengthen the baby's body. He made the baby immune to all poisons and had an extremely strong body. Lin Ming had said that the baby came from the same world as he did. The world that Lin Ming mentioned wasn't the world he had teleported to via the system, but Earth. It turned out Earth also existed in this timeline. At this moment, Lin Ming was quite excited. However, excitement was one thing. Lin Ming couldn't return to Earth because he knew that the current Earth could not withstand his power. Lin Ming did not want to destroy Earth. Looking at the sleeping baby in his arms, Lin Ming entered into meditation. Boom! Suddenly, Lin Ming felt a wave of power coming towards him. The wave of power wasn't even enough to tickle Lin Ming, but he still let out a wave of energy to block the attack. After all, none of the lizardmen here could resist such an attack. If the attack landed, it would definitely cause heavy casualties. Since Lin Ming had agreed to their request, he wouldn't go back on his word. He would treat it as thanks to them for taking care of this Earth baby. There is an expert, someone who spoke the same language as Lin Ming said. The attack just now had alarmed the lizardmen. They stood up one after another and looked nervously at the enemy that had attacked them. The enemy that had arrived was the Python clan. They looked at Lin Ming and asked, "Human? HMPH. Are you a cultivator?" "No." Lin Ming shook his head. "As long as you're willing to leave now, we won't make things difficult for you." A male from the Python clan said. As the Python said this, the lizardmen looked at Lin Ming nervously. They were worried that Lin Ming would just leave them behind. "With just you?" "Tisk, tisk," Lin Ming snorted. Without any movements, the Python that had just spoken was dead. "I've just entered your world, and have no intentions in breaking the balance between you guys. That being said, you are not allowed to invade the Lizardman clan within 30 years. Otherwise, I don't mind exterminating your clan." Lin Ming let a wisp of his aura out. However, just this wisp alone caused the Python clan members to vomit blood. "Yes, sir, we understand." All the Python clan members knelt. In this world where strength was the rule, dignity was trash. After all, their lives were in Lin Ming's hands. They didn't even dare to say a single word. "Leave," Lin Ming waved his hand and said. The Pythons hurriedly scurried away. "God," the lizardmen hurriedly said. They had hoped that Lin Ming would kill all the Pythons. "I'll give you 3 waves of energy. Every time you're in danger, use them once. Remember, if it's not the danger of extermination, don't use them." Lin Ming handed the 3 hairs to the old lizardman and said. Lin Ming's strength had reached the god tier, and he was indeed the god they were talking about. Yes. The old lizardman was extremely pleasantly surprised. He did not expect that Lin Ming would give him 3 items that could save his clan from the danger of being exterminated. From his point of view, these 3 items were enough for them to gain a foothold. After all, these were God's items. Of course, what he thought was real. "You're on your own now." After saying this, Lin Ming left. Lin Ming knew that after they obtained these 3 waves of energy, they wouldn't stay idle. The reason all this had unfolded like this was that they had taken in the baby. Now that Lin Ming had brought the baby away, the cycle was complete. "Since you and I are fated, and I can't let you return to your original world, why don't you enter my world?" Lin Ming said. With this, Lin Ming opened his small world and put the baby in it. Thanks to the support from Lin Ming's energy, the baby did have any need for the basic necessities. The strength of the baby's body had definitely reached about the strength of the body of a Tier 3 berserker. Lin Ming had placed the baby into his small world because he wanted this baby to be the controller of his world, which was the so-called Heaven's Order. The baby might not know that he had reached the heavens in a single step. Now he had directly become an existence on the level of Heaven's Order of a world. This was because Lin Ming's world would probably surpass the current world he was in. Lin Ming didn't let his small world change the baby in any way. He just adjusted the time flow to make the baby grow up quickly. Following this, Lin Ming also slowly transmitted language and many other things to the baby. In the blink of an eye, the baby grew to be about 8 or 9 years old. At that point, Lin Ming taught him cultivation methods and adjusted the time flow to make it slower once more. After doing all this, then only did Lin Ming begin to look at the continent he was now on. Demon clan, human clan, divine clan, half-beast clan. This world is also filled with many clans. Lin Ming's spiritual sense quickly scanned this world. The 2 worlds didn't have the same cultivation methods. In this world, there were no mages, secret swordsmen, or other professions. All cultivators were collectively known as friars. However, the origin of energy was very similar. Misty Cloud Sect. As Lin Ming moved forward, a huge plaque appeared on the horizon. Nothing was supporting the plaque, but it hung firmly on the horizon. "Who dares to barge into the Misty Cloud Sect?" Suddenly, 2 disciples appeared in front of Lin Ming and stopped him. "I only passed by here and haven't done anything. Have I offended you in some way?" Lin Ming asked, feeling somewhat perplexed. He had merely flown above them. Was he not allowed to do so? No one is allowed to fly in the air above the Misty Cloud sect. This is our rule. This disciple said fiercely. An expert at the Sage realm? Lin Ming looked at this disciple and frowned. No wonder Pan Gu had said that this world was incomparably dangerous. Just 2 disciples guarding the door already possessed the strength of the Sage realm. One had to know that in the world where Lin Ming was from, experts at the Sage realm were the apex existence. What are you talking about? The disciple frowned and said, get lost. Fortunately for the disciple, he didn't make a move. Otherwise, Lin Ming would not mind taking his life. The 2 of you, get lost. Suddenly, a voice appeared. Fellow friend, I hope that you will forgive my 2 disciples' rudeness. An old man appeared. I am the Grand Elder of the Misty Cloud sect. I see that although your strength is extremely strong, you look extremely unfamiliar. If you do not mind, please come to the Misty Cloud sect and have a cup of tea. The Grand Elder of the Misty Cloud sect was after all an old fox. He exceeded the 2 disciples by too much in regards to strength and tier. Hence, he could tell that Lin Ming was not simple at a glance. In this world where strength was respected, Lin Ming would naturally be treated as a guest of honor. Very well, Lin Ming nodded. It was just as well Get could learn about the things in this world here. After all, if he were to rely on the Lizardman clan, he would not be able to obtain any useful information. Even any of the 2 disciples just now could slaughter the Lizardman clan. Fellow friend, after you. The Misty Cloud sect's Grand Elder made a welcoming gesture. All right, Lin Ming did not hesitate as he landed on the ground. Lin Ming was naturally not afraid of any traps. However, he was still not very clear about the system and powers of this world, since he had just arrived. Therefore, Lin Ming was still on guard. Please take a seat. After entering the palace, the Grand Elder handed Lin Ming a cup of tea. Thank you. Lin Ming drank it all in one gulp. The tea was filled with rich spiritual energy. Looks like you trust the reputation of the Misty Cloud sect. The Grand Elder of the Misty Cloud sect laughed loudly when he saw Lin Ming drink the tea in one gulp. I can trust you just by looking at your appearance, Lin Ming said. That's good. This Grand Elder nodded his head and said. This Grand Elder's eyes were gloomy and the corners of his eyes were long and narrow. One could tell at a glance that he was definitely not a good character. I wonder what tier you are at, friend? The Grand Elder asked Lin Ming. He could not see through the tear on Lin Ming, yet he could feel surging strength on him. This made him even more aware that Lin Ming was unfathomable. Similar to yours, Lin Ming did not know what tier his strength would be at by the standards of this world, thus he merely bluffed. Since you are unwilling to reveal it, I won't ask anything more. It just so happens that the Misty Cloud sect is heading to the Fire region to pay some birthday respects 3 days later. I believe you have passed by the Misty Cloud sect for this matter as well? At that time, we can head over together and keep each other company, the Misty Cloud sect's Grand Elder suggested. Sure, Lin Ming did not reject. With the Misty Cloud sect's Grand Elder as a companion, it would save him a lot of trouble. Fellow friend, feel free to look around the Misty Cloud sect. However, please do not forcefully barge into confidential areas. The Grand Elder looked at the absent-minded Lin Ming and said, All right. Lin Ming nodded and left. Lin Ming wandered around the Misty Cloud sect with nothing to do. Buzz. Suddenly, an energy fluctuation attracted Lin Ming, and even pulled him over. This Misty Cloud sect has a big secret, Lin Ming frowned as he said. This kind of pulling force was something that even a god-tier inheritance would not be able to give Lin Ming. The intensity of the pulling force made Lin Ming know that he had to enter and take a look. This might be the reason why he had come to this world. Fellow friend, please wait a moment. 2 voices appeared as Lin Ming approached. The 2 figures swiftly blocked Lin Ming, barring him from entering. It's the 2 of you again? Lin Ming raised his head and frowned. These 2 were still the 2 disciples at the entrance earlier. You are treated as the Grand Elder's guest, thus, naturally, you have the right to look around the Misty Cloud sect. However, this is a top-secret place, please do not enter. The attitudes of the 2 were much better now. What if I insist? Lin Ming asked. You can't unless you have an order from the sect leader or forcefully barge in, one of the disciples replied. All right, Lin Ming turned around and left. The 2 disciples sighed in relief when they saw Lin Ming leave. They could not afford to offend an existence that could be treated as a guest by the Grand Elder. If Lin Ming chose to forcefully barge in, they wouldn't be able to stop him either. Rather, they might even be killed by Lin Ming. As for Lin Ming, It was a given he wouldn't just turn around and leave. He wrapped himself in his divine sense and made himself completely devoid of any aura. Lin Ming's body transformed into a strand of hair that swayed with the wind as he swooped past the first line of defense. The 72 transformations of the great sage was quite useful. Furthermore, being engulfed within his divine sense, the two disciples couldn't detect Lin Ming's existence as their tiers were too low. Lin Ming was only probing for a bit. After all, he didn't want any accidents to happen at this point. Besides, Lin Ming didn't want to alert the enemy in regards to something with such pulling force. As Lin Ming passed the first line of defense, a tightly shut door blocked his path. This door was filled with restrictions, so Lin Ming wouldn't be able to enter even if he had transformed into a single strand of hair. Since that's the case, Lin Ming's body transformed once more, transforming into the restriction. With this, the restriction that Lin Ming had transformed into fused with the restrictions on the door. The Great Sage's 72 transformations wasn't as simple as allowing one to transform into 72 items. He could change into anything in the world. 72 was just a name. The power of the skill depended on how one used it. By using the 72 transformations, Lin Ming passed the second restriction. Fellow friend, you're here? Lin Ming had just passed the second restriction when a voice appeared. Lin Ming originally thought that this was the third restriction, but when he looked over, an old man was sitting in front of him who was indeed a person of flesh and blood. Lin Ming's fiery eyes could see through the essence of things, so he couldn't be mistaken. You are. At this moment, Lin Ming no longer concealed his figure and directly transformed himself back into his original appearance. I am the sect leader of the Misty Cloud sect. I sensed you entering just now. You're really good. To think you can transform into a restriction. This is something that I have never seen before. The sect leader of the Misty Cloud sect stood up as he said. Senior, you flatter me, Lin Ming hurriedly said. The sect leader of the Misty Cloud sect in front of him was in existence at the peak of the god tier. The strength that he possessed caused Lin Ming to feel extremely threatened. Your energy is not of our world. The Misty Cloud sect leader looked at Lin Ming and said. Yes, my method of cultivation is indeed somewhat different. Lin Ming nodded. You do not belong to this world. You came from another world, right? The Misty Cloud sect leader, who had already cultivated to the peak of the god tier, naturally knew many things. Yes, I came here through the World Guardians. Lin Ming nodded and did not hide anything. After all, in such a situation, there was no need for any lies. Your strength should not be weaker than mine, yet why are you able to be so free? The Misty Cloud sect leader could feel Lin Ming's surging strength. However, how could Lin Ming, who possessed the strength of the peak of the god tier, be so free to roam about after entering this world? Logically speaking, the guardian of this world should be very wary of Lin Ming. It's because my tier is about equivalent to the Yuaning realm in your world, Lin Ming explained. Your tier is only at the Yuaning realm, yet your strength is at the celestial realm? The sect leader of the Misty Cloud sect asked. A smart person like him could naturally understand what Lin Ming meant through one sentence. That's right, Lin Ming nodded. His situation was truly as such. This forgive my ignorance. I have never seen something like this before. The news was just as shocking as to how it was shocking in Lin Ming's world, where he possessed god-tier strength while merely being at tier 10. Or rather, it could be said that it was unbelievable. I have intentionally spread my aura during our conversation. If I suppress it, you will only feel that I am only at the Yuaning realm, Lin Ming said. Lin Ming was worried that the Misty Cloud sect leader would attack if his cultivation was too low. He didn't want to go through such trouble. Hence, he had directly spread his aura, causing the Misty Cloud sect leader to feel fear, which was why he was able to avoid so much trouble. Buzz. Lin Ming suppressed the aura in his body. It's true you're only at the Yuaning realm. The Misty Cloud sect leader knew that he would definitely not be mistaken about realms. This made him aware that Lin Ming was unfathomable. I wonder why you have entered the location of my seclusion. The Misty Cloud sect leader asked Lin Ming. If it was any other ordinary person who had entered this place, he would have directly attacked. The only reason the sect leader of the Misty Cloud sect did not do so was because of the aura on Lin Ming's body that stopped him from acting rashly. Now, Lin Ming's performance had caused his attitude to change as well. This is the place where you are in seclusion. Lin Ming was stunned for a moment. To think the place that gave him a strong pulling force was the place where the Misty Cloud sect leader was in seclusion. Lin Ming had entered this place by accident. What else could it be? The Misty Cloud sect leader looked at Lin Ming innocently. I'm sorry for disturbing you. Lin Ming hurriedly cupped his fists. Entering someone else's seclusion location was indeed not a good thing to do. After all, if one was disturbed during seclusion, one could very well go mad or lose one's strength. Since you're already here, is there something you need? The Misty Cloud sect leader asked. There is something here that has an extremely great pull on me, which is why I entered to take a look, Lin Ming answered. Is it me giving off the great pull on you? The Misty Cloud sect leader asked Lin Ming. This is not the case. Lin Ming hurriedly shook his head. No matter what, he did not have any hobbies in this aspect. There's a secret room underneath where you sit, right? Lin Ming raised his head to look at the Misty Cloud sect leader as he asked. That's right. However, the things in the secret room cannot be shown to you. After all, each place has its secrets, the Misty Cloud sect leader said. Fellow friend, please understand. With his strength at the peak of the god tier, Lin Ming still had an extremely high status in this world where god tiers run amok. Hence, the Misty Cloud sect leader's attitude at this moment was still quite good. What if I insist? Lin Ming asked. Lin Ming couldn't just leave something that had such a pulling force on him. Are you here to cause trouble? The Misty Cloud sect leader stood up at this moment. Earlier, you have disturbed my seclusion, yet I was still courteous and gave you respect. Now that you're saying this, do you want to fight? Although I am courteous, it does not mean that I am afraid of you. After all, both our strength is at the peak of the god tier. The tone of the Misty Cloud sect leader was ice cold. That's not what I meant. Since I do not belong to this world, knowing your secret is useless to me. It's just that this is the first time I've met something that has such a pulling force on me since I started cultivating, which is why I don't want to give up so easily. Lin Ming smiled and explained. Lin Ming didn't want to fight now, especially since the other party was a peak god tier expert in this world. I know what's inside. I only want that dark green book, Lin Ming added. You can see what's inside. After hearing Lin Ming's words, the Misty Cloud sect leader frowned and exclaimed. Yes. I won't touch your so-called secret. I only want the book that you casually threw on the ground. Lin Ming nodded. Lin Ming's divine sense could even cover the entire world, thus the restrictions that had been set up in a small secret room here were nothing to Lin Ming. I won't take your thing for free. I've noticed that although experts run amok in your world, spiritual weapons are extremely rare. I have tons of those. In this world, the number of experts far surpassed those in Lin Ming's world, but spiritual weapons were extremely rare. Perhaps it was because there were so many experts that there weren't enough to share. In any case, the book is of no use to you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have just carelessly thrown into a corner, Lin Ming persuaded. Take out your spiritual weapon first. Let me see if it can be considered an equivalent exchange. After hearing Lin Ming's words, the Misty Cloud sect leader calmed his emotions and said, Sure. Lin Ming nodded. Following this, an attack-type spiritual weapon of the highest tier appeared in his hand. He had tons of them in his hand. The sect leader of the Misty Cloud sect felt his eyes twitch when he laid eyes on the spiritual weapon. Spiritual weapons were scarce in this world. Now that Lin Ming had casually taken out such a high-tier spiritual weapon, the Misty Cloud sect leader felt exceptionally pleasantly surprised. However, this also caused him to doubt the value of this mysterious green book. If the mysterious green book did not have any value, Lin Ming wouldn't have assumed this attitude and taken out such a high-tier spiritual weapon. Sect leader, spiritual weapons are scarce in your world, but in my world, they're overflowing. This is just something that I randomly took out. I see you're having second thoughts. Lin Ming directly interrupted the Misty Cloud sect leader's thoughts and continued, You don't believe me. Then I'll let you take a look. To completely dispel the other thoughts in the heart of the Misty Cloud sect leader, Lin Ming directly took out 7 to 8 spiritual weapons of the highest tier. These are only a part of my collection. If you don't believe me, I can take out a few more too. Saying this, Lin Ming once again took out 7 to 8 spiritual weapons of the highest tier. Because of their huge size, the spiritual weapons of the highest tier stuffed the room full. The Misty Cloud sect leader swallowed a mouthful of saliva. In the entire Misty Cloud sect, there were only a few spiritual weapons of such a tier. Right now, Lin Ming had casually taken out over a dozen of them. Since you have so many spiritual weapons of such a tier to the point they're overflowing, it shouldn't be too much to ask for 2 spiritual weapons in exchange for the mysterious green book, right? The sect leader of the Misty Cloud sect probed Lin Ming. He didn't really think much of the mysterious green book at all. He had read the contents of the book. Its contents were merely a cultivation method that was of an average tier. The reason why he had hesitated earlier was that he thought Lin Ming's offer was too generous. Now that he saw that Lin Ming had so many spiritual tools, he had dispelled his childish thoughts. In any case, if he was going to exchange, he might as well try to get more. That won't do. According to the scarcity of spiritual weapons in your world, I would suffer a great loss by agreeing to this. Lin Ming directly shook his head. Lin Ming knew that the Misty Cloud sect leader was testing him. If he really agreed to exchange for the book with 2 spiritual weapons, it was likely that not only would the Misty Cloud sect leader take an inch and run a mile, but he might even not give Lin Ming this dark green book. All right then, I will bear the pain and part with my treasure. The Misty Cloud sect leader sighed and feigned sadness. Swoosh! A dark green book arrived in front of Lin Ming. Lin Ming extended his hand and took the dark green book. Hey you, please be frank. After all, this spiritual weapon of mine is perfectly genuine. Lin Ming raised his head and spoke with an ice cold tone. Moreover, I can clearly tell you that the dark green book will be of no use to you at all. If it had any use, it wouldn't have remained on the ground till now. Lin Ming said this because after he held the book in his hands, he could sense that there was still a portion of the book that the sect leader had handed over to him. Haha, I was just joking with you. Hearing Lin Ming say this, the Misty Cloud sect leader laughed loudly. A few remnant pages appeared in front of Lin Ming. Lin Ming was right. If he could see the value of the book, he would have long treated it as a treasure and placed it properly. In the first place, the dark green book was placed in the secret room only because its material was extremely unique. Sect leader, are you personally going to celebrate that someone's birthday? Lin Ming asked. That's right. The existence in the fire region is quite dignified, and I have to personally go over. The Misty Cloud sect leader nodded. Then I will go together with you, Lin Ming said. Since the Misty Cloud sect leader was at the peak of the god tier, he was definitely respected on this continent. If Lin Ming followed along, he would be able to save a lot of trouble. I will not disturb you for now. Sect leader, please remember to call me when you set off. Lin Ming smiled and turned around to leave. All right. The Misty Cloud sect leader nodded. Lin Ming returned to the residence arranged for him and took out the dark green book. Lin Ming naturally knew that the Misty Cloud sect leader would keep an eye on where he was and what he was doing, thus he used his divine consciousness to isolate this place to make it so outsiders would be unable to probe what was happening where he was. What exactly is this thing? How can it have such a pulling force on me? Lin Ming frowned and said. After Lin Ming opened the dark green book, he saw that it was just an ordinary cultivation method that could not be any more ordinary. However, since the dark green book could have such a pulling force on him, it could not be so simple. Lin Ming tried to inject his power into the dark green book, but the book simply absorbed it all. He then tried injecting more energy into it, but it was like a stone sinking into the ocean. Uncle! Suddenly, a voice appeared. This voice made Lin Ming open his small world. What's wrong? Looking at the 8-year-old Jai Tong in front of him, Lin Ming smiled and asked. I can feel that something you have just obtained something. The pull of that something is very strong on me, Jai Tong said. This? Lin Ming frowned and held the dark green book in front of him as he asked. Yes, it's this thing. Seeing the dark green book in Lin Ming's hand, Jai Tong was extremely excited. Without any hesitation, Lin Ming handed the dark green book to Jai Tong. Buzz! Suddenly, the dark green book merged into Jai Tong's body. Lin Ming didn't even have the time to stop it. Uncle, I'm so sleepy, Jai Tong, who had just merged with the dark green book, said sleepily. Lin Ming hurriedly checked on Jai Tong and found that there were no anomalies in Jai Tong's body, so he put him back into his small world. After Jai Tong merged with the dark green book, Lin Ming could clearly feel that his small world was beginning to change. Of course, the changes were extremely subtle. Since the dark green book had been absorbed by Jai Tong, Lin Ming's thoughts moved away from the book. Lin Ming knew that Jai Tong's absorption of the book would only bring benefits and not disadvantages. Therefore, Lin Ming could rest assured. Lin Ming withdrew his divine consciousness and opened his eyes. Fellow friend, let's prepare to set off. At this moment, a voice appeared from outside. All right, Lin Ming nodded and walked out of the room. Hua! With a wave of the Misty Cloud sect leader's hand, a spatial crack appeared in front of them. The Misty Cloud sect leader entered the spatial crack. Lin Ming did not hesitate and followed closely behind. Once one reached the peak of the god tier, one would be able to tear open space with his bare hands and create a spatial tunnel. Thus, wherever a peak god tier wanted to go in the world, he could arrive in an instant. Lin Ming had simply taken a step forward and found himself to have arrived at the renowned fire region. The so-called fire region was not full of flames or anything like that. On the contrary, the temperature here was a little cold. At the moment, there was a sea of people around. It could be said that all the famous people in the world had personally come to celebrate that someone's birthday. Fellow friends, please take your seats. Suddenly, a huge figure appeared in the sky. The minute this figure appeared, it gave Lin Ming an extremely oppressive feeling. Apart from the oppressive feeling, he also felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity, which made Lin Ming somewhat curious. Thank you, fellow friends, for flattering me by showing up. Please take a seat. The treatment given to god-tier experts was naturally different. Their seats were all extremely luxurious. Fellow friend, because Lin Ming was not from this world, a seat hadn't been prepared for him. It's fine. I'll take a stroll. Lin Ming waved his hand and said, you must not cause any trouble while you are here. Although this fellow is also at the peak of the god tier, his combat strength is truly unfathomable, the Misty Cloud sect leader said to Lin Ming. This was because the Misty Cloud sect leader noticed that Lin Ming's realm was once again at the Yuaning realm. It was apparent that Lin Ming had once again suppressed all the strength in his body. That's for sure. Lin Ming nodded his head. After the Misty Cloud sect leader finished saying this, he turned his head away. After all, this was not his home ground. Even if Lin Ming caused a ruckus, it would be nothing to do with him. Moreover, those who watched the show would never find the matter troublesome, even if they were god-tier experts. Lin Ming freely shuttled through the fire region. The environment here was extremely comfortable to Lin Ming. Get out of the way. Don't you have eyes? A figure crashed into Lin Ming. However, Lin Ming's physical body caused this fellow to directly fall to the ground. It was fortunate that Lin Ming hadn't used any physical strength, otherwise, this fellow would have been smashed to pieces. Don't you have eyes? The guy stood up and said fiercely. Damn it, how can a Yuaning realm kid have such a powerful physical body? I'm at the Fenshin realm. The guy realized that something was wrong. However, he belonged to the fire region. Even if something was wrong, who would dare to act so atrociously here? Tisk, tisk. Lin Ming shook his head. He couldn't be bothered to argue with such a fellow. Stop right there. Seeing that Lin Ming actually ignored him, the guy was furious. I won't fight with you now. However, if you insist on fighting, I can't guarantee you can block my power. Lin Ming sneered and said. He didn't want to lower himself to such a fellow's level, but was this fellow treating him as a pushover? You're bullying someone again. Suddenly, a delicate voice sounded. Lin Ming turned around and saw a lady who looked like a spoiled young miss. However, this girl was extremely kind. It's fine, you can leave. I want to see if this guy dares to make a move on my father's birthday, the spoiled young miss said. Young miss, it's my fault. The guy who was extremely vicious just a minute ago actually admitted defeat. It was a given he would do so. After all, the lady was the precious princess of the Fire Region Lord. He wouldn't dare to offend her. Count yourself lucky. This guy glanced at Lin Ming and said coldly. Lin Ming didn't even bother to look at him. Tisk, tisk. Lin Ming didn't respond. He merely sent a strand of the mutated seed of flame into the fellow's body. Lin Ming could very well ignore such a person, but he had provoked him again and again. He, Lin Ming, wasn't a pushover that would just allow himself to be pushed over. The fellow would be fine for the time being, but soon he would not be able to be so carefree for any time longer. Scram. Relying on his illustrious family status, the guy was especially arrogant. Even after he had left far away, one could still hear his curses. Thank you. Lin Ming looked at the innocent-looking woman in front of him and said. What are you thanking me for? I just can't stand someone who relies on his family to be haughty while lacking knowledge and being idle all day. If I wasn't in a good mood, I would have taught him a lesson just now, the woman snorted and said. Looking at your face, you're quite young. How old are you? Lin Ming's body had been reconstructed many times and had also undergone quite some body forging, thus his physical body was perfect. This was especially so for Lin Ming's face. It was simply something that would only appear in a dream. Thus the moment Lin Ming turned his head, the woman was instantly attracted to him. 20-something years old? Lin Ming thought for a moment and said. Lin Ming's age had stopped at 20-something years old. Moreover, although Lin Ming seemed to have cultivated for a long time, if one did the math, his cultivation time was quite short. 20-something years old? How can you be that age and already be in the Yuaning realm? Hearing Lin Ming's words, the woman obviously didn't believe him. I don't dare to lie. Lin Ming thought about it for a moment. He was truly no more than 30 years old, so he said his age confidently. Which family or clan are you from? The woman was obviously unconvinced, thus she asked about his family. No one would believe that someone in their 20s could reach the Yuaning realm. I'm just an unaffiliated person. I have no family or clan. Lin Ming shook his head and said, "TCH, if you don't want to tell me, forget it." The woman spoke with some anger. "This is my jewelry. If anyone dares to bully you here, take it out. It will work." The woman took off her necklace and handed it to Lin Ming. Lin Ming nodded and took the necklace in his hand. "Since you gave me a gift, I can't be ungrateful. I happen to have a few spiritual weapons I'm not using. I'll give you one." After he took the necklace, Lin Ming said. With this, an attacking type spiritual weapon appeared in Lin Ming's hand. The spiritual weapon was of the highest tier. "This is for me." Looking at the level of the spiritual weapon in Lin Ming's hand, the woman was stunned for a moment. She could sense the level of the spiritual weapon, and she knew even her father would treat the spiritual weapon as a treasure. And now Lin Ming was giving to her just like that. "Yes, it's for you." Lin Ming nodded and said, "You're not here to get close to my father via me, are you? I can tell you here and now that trying to sweet-talk me is useless." Although the lady liked the spiritual weapon, she wasn't blinded by it. After all, she had seen the world. Following her father, she had seen all sorts of scenes. Furthermore, her father also had a divine artifact. Therefore, the lady could resist the temptation and think twice. "My pure liking for you has nothing to do with your father. Furthermore, I haven't even met your father. How can I curry favor with him?" Lin Ming smiled and said. Lin Ming simply felt a sense of closeness when he looked at the lady. Moreover, she was indeed likable. "You don't believe me?" Lin Ming looked at the lady who wouldn't accept the spiritual weapon and said with a smile, "I have many of these things." With this, Lin Ming repeated his actions and directly took out a pile of spiritual weapons at the highest tier. "How could you?" Watching as Lin Ming took out many spiritual weapons at the highest tier, the lady said in disbelief, "Are you really only in the Yuaning realm? How could someone in the Yuaning realm have so many spiritual weapons at such a tier? It was impossible. If we're calculating according to the division of realms, I'm indeed only in the Yuaning realm." Lin Ming nodded and said, "The realm was the realm, but strength was another matter. Here, I still want to take a look around." Lin Ming handed the attacking type spiritual weapon to the lady and turned to leave. "What's your name?" Just as Lin Ming was about to leave, the lady asked. "Lin Ming, Lin of the forest, Ming of tomorrow," Lin Ming answered. "You are so good looking, yet your name is so unsophisticated." After hearing Lin Ming's answer, the woman stuck out her tongue and said, "My name is Feng Lin." The lady also said her name loudly. "Okay, I'll remember it." Lin Ming nodded. Lin Ming had just left when he heard a burst of shouting. "Someone's dead." The guy who had bumped into Lin Ming and humiliated him just now was now lying on the ground, motionless. How can a cultivator at the Fenshin realm die so easily? He even has a high-tier defensive-type spiritual weapon on him. At this moment, an old man stood up from his seat among the god tiers. "Grandson." The old man shed tears and cried out as he rushed to the fellow. The fellow was already dead. Lin Ming's methods made it so that even a god-tier expert like the old man was unable to revive the fellow. Even if there was only a wisp of the fellow's remnant soul, the old man would have been able to revive his grandson. However, Lin Ming had wiped out every last trace of the fellow's soul and everything related to him. What posed a stark difference was that the fellow's physical body didn't seem to be injured at all. "Grandson. Who did this?" The old man's divine consciousness instantly enveloped the area. However, Lin Ming's strength was also at the god tier, and he had the divine consciousness as well. Thus, the old man had no way of discovering that it was Lin Ming who had done it. Mutated seed of flame. When this old man was examining his grandson's body, he suddenly found a clue. He found that there was still a trace of a mutated seed of flame's aura in his grandson's body. "Flame!" the old man shouted. If this was any other time, he would have treated the Fire Region Lord with respect and courtesy. However, his grandson had just been killed by a mutated seed of flame. Only the Fire Region Lord, Flame, had mutated seeds of flame. Even if others wanted to frame him with this, they couldn't. What's wrong? A middle-aged man appeared in front of the old man and asked. Look for yourself, the old man said with extreme grief and indignation. Isn't this your grandson? Flame went forward and asked. However, he also sensed that there seemed to be something wrong with the fellow immediately. There is a trace of a mutated seed of flame in my grandson's body, and such a thing can only be found in your body. How are you going to explain this matter? The god-tier old man looked at Flame and asked, did you know that due to our cultivation method, we can only have one child and pass the method down through that child? Now that my grandson has died, doesn't that mean that our family's future will be cut off? The old man spoke with grief and indignation again. In this world, those who had reached the celestial realm had an abundance of descendants. Thus, even if one of their descendants died, they wouldn't care at all. However, it was different for this old man. Due to the cultivation method, this old man only had one son, who only had one son, which made it so he only had one grandson, and he could only have one grandson. If this grandson died, he would have no descendants. That was why the fellow was so arrogant and despotic. He still didn't know to control himself even though he was in the fire region. That was because he knew that no matter what mistakes he made, his grandfather would always protect him. However, the fellow had never thought that he would provoke someone like Lin Ming who was merciless. I really don't know about this, Flame shook his head and said. Moreover, if I were to make a move, I wouldn't have left such childish evidence. Besides, I would not do such a thing in the first place, Flame explained. As for the mutated seeds of flame, you and I both know that although others can't have it, they can collect the traces of them when I make a move, Flame added. Good riddance. Suddenly, an old woman appeared. Your bullshit of a grandson has been bullying people and wreaking havoc everywhere just because of your support. In some places, just the mention of your grandson's name is enough to make a child cry. Now that he's dead, the world is one less of garbage. The old woman didn't even look at the old man's ashen face as she said all this. The old woman's curses made the already distraught old man even angrier. Lion, you're courting death. The old man's eyes were wide with anger, and his heart was filled with grief and indignation. He didn't have a place to release his anger, and now this old woman had stepped forward. I'm courting death? Who knows who will live and who will die? The old woman's aura also erupted. She was actually a celestial realm expert. Please stop. Since this has happened in the fire region, I'll take responsibility. Besides, even if the two of you fight, you won't be able to solve anything. Flame stood between the two and said, Humph. After hearing that, the old man snorted and withdrew his strength. How are you going to investigate? The old man had used all kinds of methods to investigate, but he couldn't find out who had attacked. Moreover, the only clue was the trace of a mutated seed of flame. Every action in the fire region is recorded in the fire spirit stone. We only need to check it to find out, Flame said. At this moment, a pretty lady in the crowd watched the scene in front of her. Lin Ming. The first person that the woman could think of was Lin Ming. She quickly went to the fire spirit stone to check it out. Flame also led everyone to the fire spirit stone. It wasn't Lin Ming who made a move. Feng Lin couldn't see through Lin Ming's methods. Thus, even if she checked the fire spirit stone, she still couldn't know who made a move. Feng Lin, why are you here? Looking at Feng Lin, Flame frowned. Normally, he wouldn't question wherever Feng Lin went. After all, everyone in this world knew that he loved and pampered his daughter very much. But now, others would very easily have speculations with Feng Lin's appearance here. After all, a Celestial's grandson had just died. I just activated the fire spirit stone and am waiting for the seniors, Feng Lin said. Everyone, please take a look. Flame activated the relevant scene. They were all god-tier experts, so even though the fire region was vast, they could see all movements clearly. He's still fine at this time, how could it be? Looking at the sudden death of his grandson, the old man frowned. If it were a celestial realm expert who made a move, such a feat could indeed be achieved, a celestial realm expert said. However, a celestial realm cultivators won't make a move on your grandson. Wait, that guy just now. The old man suddenly pulled back time and looked at Lin Ming. From the beginning to the end, this was the only person who came into close contact with my grandson. Everyone else hid far away. The old man looked at Lin Ming and said, however, he's only in the Yuaning realm. Through the fire spirit stone, Flame could naturally know Lin Ming's current realm. How could he be an ordinary Yuaning realm cultivator if he can send my grandson to the ground just by relying on his physical body. Could it be that he's hiding his cultivation? The old man voiced his doubts. It shouldn't be. We are all at the celestial realm. It is very difficult for one to conceal one's realm in front of us. Flame shook his head. He trusted in himself and his judgment. Impossible. How could my grandson die just like that? This old man's brows were tightly knitted. I know that guy. His strength is indeed at the celestial realm. Suddenly, a voice appeared. Everyone turned their heads and saw that the one who spoke was the Misty Cloud sect leader. It must be known that the Misty Cloud sect leader and the Fire Region Lord, Flame, had always been on bad terms. They had even fought several times previously. However, the Misty Cloud sect leader was not saying this now to make things worse for Flame. Instead, he was trying to help Flame out of his predicament. Otherwise, if the only grandson of a celestial were to die in Flame's fire region without any clear reason, it was likely that the fire region would not be at peace in the future. You know him? The old man frowned and asked. Yes, he is not from this world, thus we are unable to see through his realm, the Misty Cloud sect leader explained. He and Lin Ming could only be considered to have met once, and Lin Ming was not from this world anyway. Find him, the old man said in extreme anger. I wonder how strong this guy is? Flame asked. It's true his realm is only at the Yuaning realm, but from what I've seen, his strength has indeed reached the celestial realm. That being said, it should be very difficult for him to truly unleash his strength. Therefore, I think he can at most unleash the power which is somewhere at the advanced celestial realm. The Misty Cloud sect leader analyzed Lin Ming's strength based on the 2 days of contact he had with him. That's easy then, Flame nodded. At this moment, the old man had already disappeared from where he was. He was off to take revenge for his grandson. Lin Ming had long torn apart space and left the place. Furthermore, he had also completely wiped out all traces of his aura. If compared with the old man, Lin Ming's divine consciousness was of a higher grade since it wasn't obtained through pure fusion. The countless reincarnations he went through, added with the mutated seeds of flame tempering his divine consciousness, had made his divine consciousness more resilient and powerful. At this moment, the old man had searched the entire fire region, yet Lin Ming was nowhere to be found. It really is him, and he doesn't belong to this world. The lady didn't know why, but she sighed. For her, she seemed to have some inexplicable feelings for Lin Ming upon meeting him. Looking at the spiritual weapon in her hand, the young girl couldn't help but blush. You must stay safe. The lady also hated the guy who had been killed by Lin Ming. That guy was a scourge. He did deserve to die. At this moment, Lin Ming had already arrived in a mountain where people were scarce. Lin Ming really didn't want to fight with a god-tier expert, because if that happened, any move could easily make an empire collapse. He had just entered this world, and had no intentions of plunging the world into misery just yet. In the fire region, the old man spoke with grief and indignation. How can he disappear without a trace? He had lost all composure as one in the celestial realm. Million spirit talismans transformed to track. In my name, come out. The old man forced out the blood essence in his body and splattered it on the tracking spirit talisman. Go. The old man spoke again, and the spirit talisman instantly disappeared. Why does the kid have a mutated seed of flame? Could it be that his world also has mutated seeds of flame? Have they all been collected by him? Feeling the wisp of the mutated seed of flame from just now, Flame frowned and couldn't help but be puzzled. One had to know that he had collected all the mutated seeds of flame in this world. That was why this place was called the Fire Region. Now, an existence with a mutated seed of flame had appeared. It was a given he wanted to see the person as well as the mutated seed of flame. Buzz. Lin Ming, who was deep in the mountains, suddenly felt a wave of energy fluctuation. A spirit talisman suddenly appeared in front of him and then rushed toward him. Humph. Lin Ming snorted. The mutated seeds of flame within him appeared and burned the spirit talisman completely. Found you. The old man shouted and quickly tore space apart. My location has been exposed. Lin Ming frowned. He knew that although the spirit talisman had been directly burned into ashes by him, the appearance of this spirit talisman meant that his location had been exposed. So be it then. Lin Ming sighed and didn't choose to escape again. Either way, since the old man had such methods, wherever Lin Ming ran, he would be found. Celestial realm cultivators had endless methods, to begin with. To think you didn't continue to run. The old man looked at Lin Ming, his eyes wide with anger. Were you the one who killed my grandson? The old man questioned loudly. I say, are you insane? You don't even know who was the culprit, yet you came after me for such a distance. Lin Ming rolled his eyes after hearing that. You've chased me all the way here, why are you still asking me this question? Lin Ming was ridiculing in his heart. Good, good. After hearing Lin Ming's words, the old man was so angry that he laughed. With that grandson of yours, it would be a disaster for him to be alive anyway. Me killing him is just a good deed. Lin Ming nodded and said, "Ah." The old man roared angrily, and his aura erupted. Boom! As the old man's aura erupted, the surrounding mountains and rivers instantly turned into ashes. This was the terrifying aspect of celestial realm cultivators. Just their aura alone was very difficult for the world to withstand. Buzz! The surrounding celestial realm cultivators moved together to seal this place off into a battlefield. They didn't want to damage the world. After all, this world was their foundation. Old man, you want to bully me? Lin Ming looked at the old man and said, "No matter what, I'm going to destroy you today." The old man said angrily. However, Lin Ming didn't seem to care. If you feel that you have this ability, I won't stop you. Lin Ming spread out his palms and said. Right now, his strength was also at the peak of the god tier. He wasn't afraid of this so-called celestial realm cultivator at all because Lin Ming could sense that this old man was only at the peak of the god tier, and his realm was not that solid either. As such, Lin Ming wasn't afraid of him at all. Boundless lightning. The old man used an attack technique. Black tortoise. Lin Ming said. Boom! All of the attacks were blocked. As a divine artifact, the attack was like a mere scratch for the longevity monument. A divine artifact. In Lin Ming's world, there were spiritual weapons and divine artifacts, and there were quite a few spiritual weapons at the highest tier of the sage realm, but there were only the great 4 divine artifacts and a few weaker ones. In this world, there were only 4 divine artifacts. Flame owned one of them. This kid is definitely not simple. Flame frowned and said, judging from the exchange just now, this kid's realm is really only at the Yuaning realm. It's not that we've misjudged, because our cultivation methods are different. It's that this guy already has the power of the celestial realm, though he's only in the Yuaning realm. Flame's observation was extremely accurate. With just one glance, he could tell that Lin Ming's true strength was not as his realm suggested. That's not possible, the old woman said. You and I are both in the celestial realm. Whether it's possible or not, take a closer look and you'll know. Flame shook his head and said. As expected, the old woman's expression changed slightly as she fine-tuned her senses. The impossible had indeed happened. Added with the divine artifact he has, it's going to be very difficult for the Shen's Yuzi to do anything to him, Flame added. 8 divine dragons. When the old man saw that his attack had been so easily resolved by Lin Ming, he was very aware that Lin Ming was going to be a very tough opponent. Humph! Wheels of wrath. Lin Ming spoke again. Lin Ming no longer chose to defend and turned to attack. Roar! With 8 miserable roars, the 8 divine dragons were instantly killed by Lin Ming. This, if I'm not mistaken. This is another divine artifact. A celestial realm cultivator said in surprise. In their world, only celestial realm cultivators could have divine artifacts, but there were only 4 divine artifacts in total. Just like the old man who was fighting with Lin Ming, he didn't even have a single divine artifact. If you have any other methods, just use them, Lin Ming said with a mocking expression. HMPH, kid, you're just using your divine artifacts to act all-powerful. The old man was even more furious now. Because Lin Ming possessed god-tier power, thus he could completely activate the power of the divine artifacts. With the usage of 2 of his divine artifacts, Lin Ming had made it so the old man had no power to fight back. No matter how Lin Ming used his current power, it didn't matter. The moment the divine artifacts took him as their master, they would become one with him. When Lin Ming used them, it would be as easy as raising his arm and moving his fingers. He felt no pressure at all. I'm not restricting you. If you have a divine artifact, you can use it too. Lin Ming spread his hands and said. Who set the rule that no divine artifacts could be used in a battle? Back when Lin Ming was at tier 10, he had used the stupa, the summit of the Great Four, for suppression. Now that Lin Ming's power at the god tier, how could he stop using the divine artifacts instead? Don't tell me you don't even have a divine artifact. Lin Ming's tone changed as he spoke. Of course, Lin Ming knew that not every god tier expert could have a divine artifact. It was just like how the great sage had power that even the emperor couldn't withstand. Yet the great sage's ruby golden cudgel couldn't be considered a divine artifact yet. Poor Lin Ming sneered and said, "What did you say?" His words made the already furious old man laugh out of anger. "If your grandson had only insulted me, I wouldn't have killed him. However, I think you know how trash your grandson is. To think he massacred a small sect before coming." Lin Ming snorted and said coldly, "And it's only because there's a word in the name of that small sect that he doesn't like it. Your grandson has done countless such things, hasn't he? Since you don't want to educate him, I'll help you do it," Lin Ming continued. Lin Ming looked at the celestial realm experts around him and asked, "You want to deal with me for a scumbag like this? I will be the first to stand on your side." The old woman who had just argued with the old man said directly, "This was because one of her descendants was killed by that old man's grandson." As for the remaining celestial realm experts, very few spoke. They were all tacitly agreeing to what Lin Ming had said. To be able to pamper your grandson to such an extent, not only is your grandson trash, you're also trash. After Lin Ming pulled the celestial realm experts to stand on his side, he looked at the old man and spoke again. "Today, I will destroy you." The old man spoke fiercely. Lin Ming's attack on him wasn't just physical, it was also mental. "Since you said so, I'll punish you on behalf of heaven." Lin Ming didn't care about these words at all. Even though the old man was furious, it wasn't like he could do anything to him. "Stupa!" Lin Ming snorted and said. As Lin Ming spoke, the stupa appeared in the air. All the cracks on the stupa had been repaired before he had entered this world. Therefore, the stupa was now all complete and at its peak. "Master!" Gandalf appeared in front of Lin Ming. Another divine artifact. The people around sucked in a breath of cold air. What kind of monster is this guy? It's one thing for him to have the power of the celestial realm when he's only in the Yuaning realm, but how can he have so many divine artifacts? As Lin Ming's stupa appeared, the surrounding voices sounded. Could he be that guy? Suddenly, a celestial realm expert exclaimed as if he had thought of something. "What guy?" Everyone looked at the celestial realm expert who had just exclaimed. "The guy from the Trial of Fate." The celestial realm expert frowned as he said, "This?" Hearing these words, the surrounding people all sucked in a cold breath of air. This was because what the celestial realm expert said made sense. At that time, although they could know what happened on the grounds of the Trial of Fate, they couldn't see Lin Ming's face clearly. This was also why they were so anxious to kill Lin Ming while he was still in the Trial of Fate. If that's the case, it does make sense. He indeed has the divine consciousness, and indeed fits the rule, that only those below the Yuaning realm can enter. Flame nodded and said, "Furthermore, so many celestial realm experts have been stripped of 1,000 years' worth of cultivation, and all of that has been merged into his body. This is also why he can possess the strength of the celestial realm, when he is only in the Yuaning realm." Flame was indeed knowledgeable. To think he was able to analyze so many things with just one sentence, and the results of his analysis were all correct at that. As Flame said all this, everyone's eyes flashed as they started having thoughts in their hearts. If what Flame said was true, Lin Ming's future was truly limitless. He would definitely be an existence that would surpass them. Therefore now was the time to curry favor with Lin Ming. Besides, even if Flame was wrong, Lin Ming was still in existence with 3 divine artifacts and the power of the celestial realm. To be on good terms with him now wouldn't be a loss. Therefore, at this moment, the old man was unknowingly isolated. At this moment, Lin Ming's stupa had finished compressing energy. "Gandalf, suppress," Lin Ming said coldly. "Suppress." A black figure enveloped Lin Ming. The old man's eyelids twitched. Boom! Although the celestial realm experts had sealed the place off and were protecting it, the intense trembling still caused everyone's hearts to palpitate. They could tell that if it wasn't for their protection, Lin Ming's suppressive force might have penetrated the entire world. Pooh! At this moment, the old man spat out a mouthful of blood, and his expression instantly changed. "All of you." Looking at the celestial realm experts who didn't help him, the old man felt psychologically hurt. "You should know that he's from another world. We're from the same world, and we've lived together for thousands of years." The old man tried to use the relationship card. At this moment, no one responded to him. "Your grandson has indeed done all sorts of evil. If you stop pursuing your grandson's matter now, we're willing to help you," a celestial realm expert said at this moment. He was trying to give both parties a way out. "All of you think so?" Looking at the celestial realm experts around him, The old man asked in disbelief.